Good morning and welcome to our January 12th closed session meeting. I'm going to go around the room to make sure we have a quorum, starting with Mr. Kim.
Good morning.
Ms. Harris.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Carla Silvestre.
Good morning, Grace Rivera.
Good morning, Julie Yang.
Thank you. Could I get us, Ms. Harris, to lead us into closed session, please?
I move that the board meet in closed session to address topics listed in the posted resolution for today's closed session and for the reasons and on the bases stated therein.
I second.
All in favor, raise your hand. That is unanimous with those present. Let us go forth into closed session. Good afternoon, Happy New Year, and welcome to the first board meeting of 2023. Welcome to our board members, MCPS staff, and members of our community who are joining us here today, and those that are watching this meeting virtually on the MCPS website and MCPS TV. Now let us begin the meeting by standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic on which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I will call the roll to recognize board members to establish that we have a quorum, starting with Mr. Kim.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Ms. Harris?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Mrs. Nadrowski?
Good afternoon.
Mrs. Evans?
Good afternoon.
Ms. Grace Rivera Oven?
Good afternoon.
Ms. Yang?
Good afternoon, everyone.
And we have Ms. Brenda Wolf on Zoom.
Good afternoon.
Now we are going to approve the agenda, but we're going to approve an amended agenda. I need a motion to remove 8.7 from the consent items.
So moved. Sorry, so moved.
All in favor, raise your hands. Ms. Wolf? Oh, thank you. That is unanimous. Okay. Dr. McKnight?
All right.
Can I get a motion to approve the amended agenda?
Oh, I apologize. I move the agenda as amended.
I second.
All in favor, raise your hand. That's unanimous. Dr. McKnight, item 3.
Thank you. Item 3, I'd like to move forward the monthly Human Resources and Development Report for approval.
Move approval.
I second.
All in favor, raise your hand. And that is unanimous.
All right. Thank you. Today, I bring forward a few recommended appointments for the board's approval. The first appointment I am bringing forward is for Mrs. Shoho Shabaski as Assistant Director in the Department of Facilities Management in the Office of District Operations in the Office of the Chief Operating Officer. Joining her today are her son, Leo Chi, and her mother, Hiromi. Mrs. Shabaski has been employed with Montgomery County Public Schools for 6 years as a project manager and most recently as architect school facilities. Mrs. Shabaski looks forward to joining the Department of Facilities Management to support all of the DFM divisions in archiving the district's future vision and core values, supporting all MCPS students and staff.
Move approval.
I second.
All in favor, raise your hand. Ms. Wolf, say aye.
Aye.
That is unanimous.
Congratulations and thank you. Our next appointment we're moving forward for approval, is Mrs. Shafina Yunus as Assistant Director in the Department of Employee and Retiree Service Center in the Office of Finance. Mrs. Yunus has been employed with MCPS for 16 years as a data support specialist, senior specialist of retirement, and most recently as senior specialist in the Technology Reporting and Services Support Office. Mrs. Yunus looks forward to leading and serving the Employee and Retiree Service Center.
Move approval.
I second.
All in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
That is unanimous.
Congratulations and thank you. Our next appointment moving forward to the board is for Mrs. Stephanie R. Dinga as principal of Clarksburg Elementary School Number 9. Joining her today is her husband, Rocky Dinga. Her 18-month-old daughter, Clara Dinga, will be watching online. Mrs. Dinga has been employed with MCPS for 15 years as a special education and general education teacher, assistant principal, acting principal, and most recently as principal of Goshen Elementary School. She looks forward to joining the Seneca Valley High School cluster to support students, families, and staff with the opening of the exceptional new school in the Clarksburg community.
Move approval.
I second.
All in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
And that's unanimous.
Congratulations, that completes the appointments for today.
We have recognitions.
Yep, can say item 4.
Item 4.
Thank you. We do have a number of recognitions today that I will present to the board. Just pause for just a moment for transition. Okay. Thank you. Our first recognition is recognition of African American Heritage Month. Whereas African American Heritage Month celebrates the history, culture, and contributions of residents living in the United States who trace their ancestral roots to Africa, and African Americans are descendants of those who were kidnapped from different regions in Africa and forcefully migrated to South America and North America, as well as those who migrated voluntarily from global locations to the United States of America. African Americans have taken informed action against racism and discrimination in the past and today to create a more just society in the United States, Maryland, and Montgomery County. Montgomery County Public Schools is committed to including the history, experiences, and perspectives of African Americans in its curricula and creating equitable, welcoming, affirming, and culturally responsive school environments for all African American students. MCPS is committed to building and sustaining positive relationships with African American community members to respond to the needs of students, caregivers, and community members with authenticity and care. Now therefore be it resolved that the Montgomery County Board of Education and the Superintendent of Schools hereby declare the month of February 2023 to be African American Heritage Month in Montgomery County Public Schools.
Move approval.
I second.
All in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Thank you. Our next recognition is for recognition of Career and Technical Education Month. Whereas Montgomery County Public Schools and national educational organizations have proclaimed February 2023 as Career and Technical Education Month, and whereas profound economic and technological changes in our society rapidly are reflected in the structure and nature of work, thereby replacing new and additional responsibilities in our educational system, career and technology education programs are innovative and vital components of the educational system in MCPS, which is committed to providing students with rewarding opportunities to learn valuable career, academic, problem-solving, and life skills. Career and technology education programs in MCPS are aligned with domestic and international business and industry partners, practices to ensure students are equipped with the communication, global awareness, time management, team building, and leadership skills required for lifelong career and success. CTE programs in MCPS continually are providing students with opportunities to gain invaluable hands-on experience through job shadowing, internships, apprenticeships, dual credit, and/or site-based work experiences. We are committed to recruiting highly qualified, focused educators for our CTE programs who are dedicated to ensuring our students are career and college ready. Therefore, be it resolved that the Montgomery County Board of Education and Superintendent of Schools hereby declare February 2023 to be observed as Career and Technical Education Month in Montgomery County Public Schools.
Move approval.
I second.
All in favor, raise your hands.
Aye.
And that's unanimous.
Thank you. Our next resolution is a resolution for Teen Dating Violence Awareness and Prevention Month. The National Resource Center on Domestic Violence has designated the month of February 2023 as Teen Dating Violence Awareness and Prevention Month to raise community awareness about teen dating violence. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention research shows that throughout 1 year, more than 8% of high school students in the United States reported experiencing physical or sexual dating violence with young women, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and plus youth facing the highest rate. High school students who experience physical violence in a dating relationship are more likely to use drugs and alcohol, are at greater risk of suicide, and are more likely to carry patterns of abuse into future relationships. The establishment of Teen Dating Violence Awareness and Prevention Month raises community awareness and provides training to students and staff to benefit young people, their families, schools, and communities regardless of socioeconomic status, gender, sexual orientation, or ethnicity. MCPS is committed to supporting programs that are proven to assist preteens and teens in developing safe and healthy relationships and prevent dating violence. Therefore, be it resolved that the Montgomery County Board of Education and the Superintendent of Schools hereby proclaim the month of February 2023 as Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month and support the Choose Respect Montgomery Conference to be held on April 16th, 2023 through continued education in health classes and public service announcement contests, and the annual conference to work toward ending teen dating violence by empowering young people to develop healthier relationships, assist students and families in assessing information and resources, and engage in discussions with family members and peers to promote awareness and prevention of teen dating violence.
Move approval.
I second.
All in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Thank you. And our final resolution is a resolution acknowledging National School Counseling Week. National School Counseling Week will be celebrated from February 6th through the 10th, 2023. This year's theme, School Counselors, Helping Students Dream Big, will focus public attention on the unique contribution of professional school counselors the contribution professional school counselors make in helping students achieve academic and social emotional success, plan for a career, and become college and career ready. National School Counseling Week highlights the tremendous impact school counselors have in helping students achieve school success and plan for a career. Professional school counselors are committed to helping students explore their abilities, strengths, interests, and talents as these characteristics relate to career awareness and development. Professional school counselors help parents, guardians focus on ways to further the educational, personal, and social growth of their children. Professional school counselors provide culturally competent services to students, parents, guardians, and caregivers, school staff, and community. They work with teachers and other educators to help students explore their potential and set realistic goals for themselves. They also address the needs of all students through prevention and intervention programs that are part of the comprehensive school counseling program. Professional school counselors incorporate leadership, advocacy, and collaboration to promote equity, access to opportunities, and rigorous educational experiences for all students. Comprehensive school counseling programs are an integral part of the educational process that ensures all students achieve success in school. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Montgomery County Board of Education hereby proclaims February 6th through the 10th, 2023, as National School Counseling Week in Montgomery County Public Schools and recommends observance in all of our school communities.
Move approval.
I second.
All in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Thank you. We have a lot to celebrate in the month of February and looking forward to it. Thank you.
Up next, we have public comments. Item 5 on our agenda. Public comments is one of opportunities to hear the views and receive the advice of community members. Board members will take your comments into consideration, but it's not our practice to take action at this time on issues that are raised. We encourage public input on policy, program, and practices. This is not the proper avenue to address specific student or employee matters, so we encourage everyone to utilize existing avenues of redress for complaints. This is a public meeting, and we expect the conduct of all speakers and members of the audience to be within the bounds of proper etiquette. Inappropriate personal remarks, rude retorts, and other such behavior is out of order and will not be tolerated. Those who demonstrate disruptive behavior during public comments may be asked to leave the room. Please check our website for information about upcoming board meetings, hearings, and work sessions, including any changes to our meeting start times. We have 8 people signed up to provide in-person testimony. Each speaker will receive 2 minutes for comments. When your name is called, please approach the table. Speak clearly and directly into the microphone. 30 seconds prior to the expiration of a speaker's time, a yellow light will go on, accompanied by a beep. A red light and a buzzer signals that your time has expired. Please push the flat button below the microphone to turn it on and begin speaking. Push the same button once more at the sound of the buzzer to turn it off. Please stay within your 2-minute allotment of time. In addition to our in-person speakers today, we have 1 person signed up to provide video testimony. We will play this submission once the in-person testimonies have concluded. Copies of testimonies can be found on Board Docs, where they are posted with the other materials for this meeting. So I will call the first 3 speakers to the chairs here. Arush Kandakori, Folashade Epibini, and Andy Endesa. And please state your name so we can hear it pronounced properly. You may begin in the order that I called you, so Arush Kandakori first. Turn your light on.
Good afternoon, Superintendent Dr. McKnight and members of the Board of Education. My name is Arush Kandakuri, and today I'm here on behalf of MoCo Innovation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing accessibility to STEM education in underprivileged schools. According to a recent study, low-income students are 5 times less likely to graduate with a degree in STEM fields compared to their higher-income fields. Furthermore, underrepresented minorities make up just 20% of the STEM workforce, despite making up 40% of the population. These statistics demonstrate the alarming disparities that exist between students who have access to STEM and those who do not. At MoCo Innovation, we have seen firsthand the positive impact that our programs can have on students by providing hands-on learning opportunities and access to interactive technology. We have seen these students develop a passion for STEM and gain the skills necessary to pursue careers in these fields. However, in order to make an even greater impact, these programs require funding. Currently, MoCo Innovation relies heavily on the work of student volunteers and sponsors to keep our programs running. While we're grateful for the support, it's not enough to reach the level of advocacy that is currently needed to address the disparities in STEM education. Currently, we're able to teach 60 Clarksville Elementary School students. But due to our limited resources, many students are simply unable to join. That's why we urge the Board of Education to consider increasing funding for early STEM programs like MoCo Innovation within the next school year operating budget. and implementing at least one program in every elementary school. Members of the Board of Education, investing in STEM education for underprivileged students is an investment in the future, both for our students and for our county as a whole. Thank you.
Go ahead and turn on your light. Yep.
Hello and good afternoon. Thank you so much for allowing me this time and space to testify for the board on behalf of my community. My name is Andy. I am a teacher of low-income tutoring programs, the president of Wheaton High School International Club, and I'm running for your 46th SMOB. My campaign is based on hearing directly from the people on what policies they think we should implement. As of recently, I've been interviewing teachers, students, and even parents about issues they want addressed. Following through on my Power to the People initiative, my first thought after hearing a repeated concern about the drug use in our school was to come here and make good on my promise that it would at least be addressed. I began to research the 2020 HHS and ECC discussion on school-based substance abuse prevention, and some of the information I found was very interesting. Youth Risk Behavior Surveillance System surveys dating as far back as 2016 shows us an increasing trend for controlled substance abuse by middle school students. This includes alcohol, vaping, cocaine, and opioid use. And on top of that, from 2016 to 2019, 51% of all emergency room visits related to substance abuse were by non-Hispanic African Americans and Hispanic/Latino people. They were all 18 years of age or younger. The largest number of emergency room visits from 2016 to 2019 related to substance abuse was for children and adolescents who resided in the Germantown area. Around half of our people of color students in MCPS are overdosing every day because of unconscious bias when it comes to relaying information that we can use to save lives. Not even less than a month ago, we had a student at Einstein overdose on opioids, the day someone from the Department of Health came to present a presentation on unprescribed drugs. A good part of these overdoses is how accessible they are. In multiple schools around the county, as long as you know the right person or ask around, you could obtain marijuana in less than a day. The new legalization of marijuana in Maryland is going to impact people's access to it, which ties back into unhealthy coping mechanisms. Schools are in desperate need of measures that prevent the exchange/sale of drugs so that we can stop minor addiction before it happens. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, good afternoon, board members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today on the importance of adding emotional intelligence into MCPS health curriculum. My name is Falashide Babinu, and while I am a junior at Seneca Valley High School, I'm also dually enrolled at Montgomery College. And this past fall semester, I had the opportunity to participate in a program centered around emotional intelligence for students. And during this program, I was able to develop deeper self-management and self-assessment skills. But I've noticed after taking MCPS health courses since elementary school, emotional intelligence was lacking in the health curriculum. And as we know, MCPS students have been advocating for years for MCPS to provide mental health resources and emotional health resources, emphasizing that the emotional and mental states of students is of utmost importance and needs to continuously be addressed by MCPS. This need increased after coming back from online school, as students noticed a lack of social skills and found it difficult managing their emotions amidst the stresses of coming back to school and the violence present in our county. Our curriculum is one of the ways MCPS can promote the importance of mental and emotional well-being. The classrooms is also one of the first places where students may encounter certain information, and sometimes one of the only places where students can go to find resources to support their mental and emotional well-being. And while the student may only be in the classroom for around 40 minutes, the lessons on self-assessment and self-management still stick in the minds of students even after they leave the classroom. And one of the most important things is to start young. As we know, elementary school students still retain information the same way high school students and other students do. And we know nationwide, as we've seen, and even in Montgomery County, when students don't know how to manage their emotions, there are negative consequences. And this can even impact their education, which can further negatively impact their mental and emotional well-being. This emphasizes the importance of MCPS including emotional health in the curriculum that deeper dives into teaching students about self-management, self-awareness, and social awareness. And how these aspects directly impact how we foster relationships with others. So MCPS students can leave the county knowing the importance of their emotions. Thank you.
Thank you. If we could get the next three speakers to please come to the table. And they are Pranil Suvarna, Lindsay Smith, and George Carlisle. Pernille?
Good afternoon, members of the board and Dr. McKnight. My name is Pernille Suvarna, and I'm a sophomore at Clarksburg High School and a candidate for the 46th student member of the board. My testimony today is on the importance of allowing school-sponsored athletics to count towards PE credit. As we all know, physical education is an important part of a student's overall development. It not only helps to promote good health and fitness, but it also teaches important life skills such as teamwork, discipline, and sportsmanship. However, many students today have a passion for sports that extends beyond the physical education classroom. They participate in sports teams, and they should be recognized for the hard work and dedication they put into these activities. As a student athlete, I've seen this hard work and dedication firsthand. That's why I propose that we allow school-sponsored athletics to count as a PE credit. In doing so, we would provide an opportunity for student athletes who may not stand to gain much from a PE class to pursue other elective options. Allowing sports to count as a PE credit is not a new idea. Many schools already do this across the country, from New York to Chicago. This stands as proof that sports can be a valid substitute for PE curricula, if not more rigorous and educational in nature. While I understand that certain graduation requirements come from the State Board of Education, MCPS still requires a full credit of PE compared to the state's half-credit minimum. This means that it is entirely within the county's policy to waive half a credit's worth of PE requirements and still be within the limits of Maryland policy. My policy team and I have written a draft proposal that outlines further background on this topic, as well as specific policies relating to waiving PE credits for athletes. In conclusion, allowing sports to count as a PE credit would be a win-win situation for both the students and the school system. It would acknowledge the hard work and dedication of students who participate in sports, and it would provide an opportunity for students to find a form of physical activity that they enjoy. I urge you to support this proposal and to help us promote good health and fitness in our schools. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Board and Dr. McKnight. I am here today as a voice for parents in my community. Many of them are actually working today and unable to attend. Parents in my community are frustrated. They are finding out that educators and administrators are going behind what they are teaching their kids at home and pushing ideas of gender ideology on their kids instead of teaching them the traditional areas of study in which these teachers are trained. For example, in second grade, a new benchmark curriculum book was presented, My Rainbow. The description that you provided to the parents hides actually the true subject matter of the book, and after reading it, it is all about an autistic girl who wants to be transgender. The transgender ideology is throughout the whole entire book. What is most appalling are the responses the teachers have been directed to provide to the students who actually speak up and ask questions. One example that was given, if a child asks, well, that's weird, he can't be a boy if he was a girl. You have encouraged teachers through your administration to say, well, when we're born, people make a guess about our gender and label us boy or girl based on our body parts. This actually undermines any teaching or viewpoint that many families in your community have used at home. You have inserted what only you want the kids to hear, thereby implying to them that their religion, their belief system, and their family tradition is actually wrong. By doing so, I believe that you have overstepped your bounds. Many parents have also voiced concerns that are pushing ideas and thoughts dictated solely by your board and administrators and principals and not allowing our kids to actually think for themselves. This is not education, it is indoctrination. We already have a dramatic mental illness increase in our kids. Perhaps we have put adult content on our kids' minds at a far too young of age. To the parents listening, please be aware that these lessons were told by many principals to be kept from the parents. I believe that full discretion and full transparency should be the board of any Board of Education. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Carlo.
Greetings. Greetings. Many of you, I'm sure, have heard of the U.S. CHIPS Act that was signed during the summer of 2022. One of the goals of this act is create a diversified pipeline of students, workforce, and educators to support this agenda through a vehicle called the R&D Manufacturing Semiconductor Institutes. I only have 2 minutes, but I've created an information packet for the board to consider participating in this opportunity. Over the past few months, we have had RFIs, but the RFP is actually expected to be released next month. I have made attempts in the past to attend to discuss this, but due to timing for some other reasons, I was not able to communicate it all the way. I hope you have the packet. I am staying today through completely to talk possibly in the new business section, to answer questions and discuss further. Thank you for your time, for allowing me to speak today.
Thank you. And now if we could get the next set of speakers to join us. I believe we have one more in-person speaker, Mr. Rosenberg. Yeah, push it. There you go. Now it's on.
And then release?
Yep.
Thank you to the board. Some of my comments are going to echo Lindsay Smith's, who had just spoken. Okay, I am well aware that there are people today who either actively embrace LGBT and transgender ideology or think it is not harmful and so have no problem with schools introducing this ideology into the MPS school system. However, there are many, if not more, parents who still believe in traditional Judean Christian values as taught in the Bible, and these values and beliefs are diametrically opposed to gender fluid ideology. Further, transgender ideology is not a proven fact. These parents do not approve of its teaching in the MPS school system, especially at the elementary school level. My main concern is that introducing highly sexualized concepts in elementary schools is not age appropriate for preschool through 5th grade. This material will cause these young children to question their identity when they otherwise don't. If the goal is inclusivity and anti-bullying, there are more appropriate ways to do this without having 3 to 10-year-olds question their sexual identities. The introduction of these ideas could cause confusion, anxiety, and disruptions within the classroom setting. Discussion of sexual identity at this age is appropriate only for parents in a home setting. Also, I've been informed that 6 LGBT books have now been placed in MCS elementary school libraries, and plans have been made to distribute these books to teachers for reading and discussion with guidelines for teachers to follow and responding to students' questions. I'll defer to Lindsay Smith's comments about what is in those guidelines, which is not appropriate. It is my understanding that MCS administration has made no attempt to notify parents of their plans to introduce these books and readings in the classroom. All stakeholders in this case should be made aware of the consciential ideology. Finally, be informed that the word is getting out and parents have now formed groups to actively fight back.
Thank you. We have your testimony. We received one video testimony submitted by Riona Seek. Please play the video.
Good afternoon, Dr. McKnight and members of the Board of Education. My name is Riona Sheikh. I'm a junior from Richard Montgomery High School, and today I'm here to address an issue that has been neglected not only by Montgomery County Public Schools, but public school systems around the world. There is no doubt that students of this day and age experience countless social issues ranging from fighting for proper racial representation to gun violence. As the prevalence of social issues increases, many students want their voices to be heard, with around 83% of young people wanting to change America through activism. But surveys show that over 50% of students across America feel like they don't have a voice at school. So why do students feel unheard despite their interest in activism? Simply put, students just don't feel comfortable advocating for themselves, for reasons ranging from fear or judgment to lack of awareness of social issues. Many begin and they don't think they're capable of making an impact. Enter social justice education. By having school systems teach students how to start advocating from grassroots effort, increase awareness of social events, and decrease self-limiting beliefs, student voice would be stronger than ever. Social justice education has been a growing concern across the country. High school English teacher T.J. Whitaker of Maplewood, New Jersey created a social justice class. Washington, D.C. provides a program called the Social Justice School for middle schoolers to explore advocacy. According to studies done on children who participated in social justice classes, exploring the ideas of privilege and oppression gave students a better grasp of the world around them, causing them to grow up to become agents of social change in their community. And yet, in this tumultuous world, brimming with school shootings and hate crimes, students are left entirely vulnerable and unequipped by MCPS to fight back and advocate for our rights. While MCPS has conducted an anti-racist system audit, plans to train teachers to become more culturally responsive, training teachers is just not going to be enough to stop a systematic issue. Rather, students need to be assured by their school system that they can advocate for their rights. Prince George's, our neighboring county, worked with their public libraries to offer a free year-long social justice camp. Students learn how they could ignite change in their communities. This camp required no additional funds as it was sponsored by the Pull-Up Fund. Considering MCPS's operating budget and the plethora of funds dedicated to social justice education, it is likely MCPS would not have to make a significant financial contribution towards implementing a social justice course.
We sincerely request you to follow other Maryland counties and join SoJust in our mission to create a year-long social justice course for both middle and high school students to embolden students to become more informed citizens and inspire the next generation of youth activists. Thank you.
This concludes our public comments. The next business meeting of the Board of Education for public comment is Tuesday, February 7th, 2023. Signups for public comment will open the evening of Tuesday, January 31st, 2023. In addition to the online signups for public comment, we allow for in-person, same-day signups when space allows. Unallocated slots may be filled on a first-come, first-served basis on the day of the meeting. In order to sign up in person, please arrive at least 15 to 20 minutes before the start of the open session and sign the form. In-person signups will close 15 minutes before public comment begins or when all slots are filled. So now we'll open it up to my colleagues if you have any comments or questions. Ms. Madrasky.
I just have one quick thing. I want to thank everybody for their testimony. For the last student, if someone could potentially reach out to her and let her know our process for implementing pilot ideas, I think it would be really neat. Thank you.
We will definitely follow up, Ms. Mandrowski. As she was sharing her testimony, I thought about how popular our virtual summer programs became year before last because we took a survey from the students around the types of classes that they wanted. So I definitely thought about that as she gave her testimony. So we will absolutely follow up with Rihanna.
Thank you.
Ms. Harris?
Yeah, thank you. I do want to thank our students for, once again, bringing very constructive ideas to the table. In particular, Ms. Indessa, as you were testifying, I can't help but notice that sitting in the room with us is our health officer, Dr. Kapunin, who has been making awareness of substance use issues part of her work, and perhaps that would be a good conversation. I think getting the students' perspective and how we communicate those issues effectively is a great opportunity. And then I'm going to get the did they go? I think, oh no, you're in the back. Social intelligence, your emotional intelligence information. We are in the process of rewriting our health curriculum. And perhaps this is an opportunity to include, again, student perspective in the things that they know, especially as we are emerging, as students are still processing the events of the past several years. What they know would help them be really, truly life ready and support their peers' wellness. So perhaps we could make a connection. Yes. And Mr. Savarna, very interesting idea, and I do know that he has already been in touch with Dr. Grant to have the most recent updated MSDE PE guidelines, which they were updated this summer. So the students are taking a very substantive look at this issue, and very much appreciate you bringing that to the table. And then just finally, some of the testimony today was disturbing to me personally. Transgender LGBTQ individuals are not an ideology, they're reality. And there are religions out there that teach that women should only achieve certain subservient roles in life, and MCPS would never think of not having a book in a classroom that showed a woman as being the superintendent of a very large school system, or a doctor, or vice president of the United States. So our students, our staff, are part of the LGBT community. They are transgender. The very few books that we're intentionally including in our curriculum, which, by the way, the language being suggested to support teachers in answering questions is evidence and science-based. That is what we have pledged to do, is to make sure every student sees themselves reflected in the curriculum and in the course and the work that they're doing in their classrooms. And I am very proud that we're doing that work and continue to support it.
Mr. Kim?
I'd like to join Ms. Harris in taking the opportunity to say this. It is our responsibility as a school system to equitably provide a high-quality education to all of our students. And that is impossible if every single student cannot see themselves reflected in the classroom. Every student, regardless of their sexual orientation or their gender identity, regardless of what they look like or where they come from, has the right to be reflected in what they learn. And I know I cannot speak for all of my peers, for all the students in this county, but let me speak for many of them as I applaud the school system for their work in realizing this vision. And to the students of MCPS, yes, ignorance and hate does exist within our community, but please know that every student, each of our 160,000 students in our large county, has a place in the school system, has a place in their school, and certainly has a place in their classroom. Thank you.
Okay. I just wanted to ask Dr. Murphy about the comment about communication. Could you say a little bit about how the resource books will be communicated to families?
Sure, thank you. I'm going to echo some of the comments that were initially made, but I think in support of, MCPS is committed to equity, and that's in our school and our district's message. We're working toward an inclusive environment for all of our students and our families. And part of how we do that is through the diversity and representation in the curriculum, also expanding our representation and shows our LGBT community and community members that this is a place where they are welcome and included. In schools, children are taught to respect one another. That's what we believe, that's what we want to see, that's what our society is built on. And to learn and work together regardless of our differences. Gender and sexuality identity is inclusive education, and it's about teaching students to live and to work with each other. And that's really what we're about as a democratic society, and that's really what we're about as a public school. So I'm going to ask Ms. Hazel to come down and talk a little bit more in detail about some of the communication, but we have worked very closely with our principals at the elementary level with the implementation. We have also worked with community members in reviewing the materials and also providing professional development. And Ms. Hazel, perhaps you could expand a little bit on what I've initially shared.
And I'm specifically focused on communication to families.
Yes, thank you. So we have been working first with our principals, teacher leaders, and to ensure that they have the information so that when we share our communication with our families, they will be ready to respond. So we've been working with our principals for the last several months, actually throughout the school year, and providing them training, and also their teacher leaders. We have communication that's gone out to our school leaders around all of the work, all of the materials, and how they are to be used. And then we will have a follow-up communication that will go out through our Things to Know communication through the superintendent that will come out very shortly. That will be shared with our families, if not tomorrow, early next week, so that they understand what is to come. But we've tried to sequence this in a way that prepares our school leaders first to be able to respond to families and have the background information and knowledge they need to be able to do so.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
And Mr. Carlisle, if you're still in the room, the new business item is not a community forum, so if there's someone that could follow up with Mr. Carlisle already? Okay. Just wanted to clarify that. I don't want you to stay for the whole thing and realize you can't get to speak at that time. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your public testimony. Now, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes. I just want to take an opportunity to thank everyone for coming out and just thank Dr. Murphy for making that comment and my colleague, Mr. Kim, for being so eloquent. He's our student, and I just love what you had to say, and I am in full support. Equity and inclusion is what we're all about. So I just wanted to just state that. I really appreciate you stepping up and making that comment, and Ms. Harris as well. But our staff, yes, it was very important that that be stated out loud. Thank you.
Thank you. We are now moving on to our next agenda item, item 6.0, virtual instruction on inclement weather days. Dr. McKnight, could you proceed with the presentation?
Yes. Thank you, President Silvestri and members of the Board of Education. So we are moving into our next topic of discussion, Today, we are going, I'd like to welcome all of the team members down who are presenting. Today, our first item for discussion is going to be our plan to return in appropriate situations to virtual instruction, specifically when we have been impacted by weather. I know that's interesting to think about right now, knowing that a few weeks ago we were experiencing spring weather. However, we are still in January, and we know that we have been impacted greatly by weather, seen and unforeseen in the months of January, February, and in some cases March. And we're bringing this forward because MSDE did open a pathway for school systems to be able to provide virtual learning opportunities. Since we came into COVID-19 and recognized that we could have a platform to use virtual instruction appropriately. So then, of course, they opened that up for us to consider for our inclement weather days. And so today we're bringing forward the plan for how we may want to repurpose, in any case, if appropriate, using virtual instruction or inclement weather days for the 22 and 23 school year. So the Board of Education, if you remember, last year had to approve the plan. And this is a process that has to be done every year in terms of the board approving the virtual plan that's put forward so that we can then send that to the state. So that's why this topic is here today on our January agenda. And I just want to say, of course, we want to be able to provide virtual instruction in appropriate situations to make sure that we're limiting any necessary interruption to instruction. And so this is a way for us to be able to continue that commitment to our students and to our families. And so we're bringing that today. I want to thank, this has been across office work done in the system. And when we think about standing up virtual learning, there's a technology component, of course. There's an instructional component, of course, because we've learned through COVID-19 that some ways that we engage with instruction has to be considered to make sure that we're making meaning for what we're teaching when we're online for our students. So we've learned so many lessons. And with it being a cross-office work, I want to say that Ms. Edwards, Dr. Pugh, our Chief Academic Officer, and Ms. Sharon have been very collaborative in making sure that all components of this plan are considered so that our students can receive the best experience if we need to move to that option. So I want to thank them for their work on that. And today I'm excited about them being able to present this plan to you. So at this point, I will turn the presentation over to our Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Hull.
Great. Thank you, Dr. McKnight, President Silvestre, board members. We're excited today to have an opportunity to share with you our virtual learning plan. The teams have done a lot of work in pulling this together. This is the second year that MSDE has made this option available to school districts. And so what you'll be hearing today and then at the end being asked to vote on is to give the superintendent the authority to shift us to an inclement weather day if appropriate. This is a very similar plan to the one that was brought before you and voted on and approved last year. And Ms. Edwards and Ms. Sharon will point out where they have made some improvements, but a very similar plan to what we had last year. We do have some makeup days and inclement weather days built into the calendar already, but this would just give us another option, as the superintendent noted, to maintain instruction if we had a multi-day event so that the students would not have interrupted instruction. And then finally today you'll hear a little bit about some of the decision points and what goes into the decisions on that 4 a.m. call about whether or not to keep schools open or if they need to be closed for safety or other reasons. So with that, I will stop and I will turn it over to the team.
Good afternoon, President Silvestre, Vice President Evans, and Dr. McKnight, and members of the Board of Education. I'm Dana Edwards. I'm the Chief of District Operations. Excited to sit here and talk to you about virtual instruction on inclement weather days. If we'd like to go to the next slide, please. As Mr. Hall noted, this is something that we came to the board and talked about last year around really the end of January, an option that the state provided us in terms of consideration, especially after coming out of about a year and a half, almost 2 years of virtual learning. So the plan we bring forward to you today is rooted in our commitment to the continuity of learning for students and the overall academic and professional operational excellence that we offer in the district. What you'll hear from us today are some enhancements to the plan, but it pretty much will be similar to what we offered last year. We did it, but we never had the opportunity to use it because there was no more inclement weather. So as we move forward, we know that our commitment is to a safe and inclusive learning environment that does not always have to be in the brick and mortar fashion. In addition, it takes into account really considering how we share this information and being transparent with it, and how we limit interruptions to instruction throughout the school year. Next slide. From September, we've had conversations about the learning progress of our students and the needs of our students, starting in September with the evidence of learning. In addition, creating those equitable conditions for students, staff, and families to be a part of the district through the anti-racist audit. The calendar discussion in October, as well as the approval of the calendar in December, we highlighted innovation through out-of-school time and really being able to provide additional professional development opportunities to our staff that align with the blueprint. However, the one thing that was critical that we continue to talk about is the limited disruption of that instructional time, not only for students but for staff, because we know that outcome will be that our students' learning and achievement will definitely be stronger. And while today's discussion an option for virtual instruction on inclement weather days or emergency situations, because I'll say both, from MSDE does not provide for traditional in-person instruction, it does create a pathway for us to utilize technology and really continue to for instruction on those days. Next slide. So for today, as we go through this conversation, we will talk a little bit about what are MSDE's requirements for the application, and I think that that's important. As Dr. McKnight shared, we do need to apply, and this is one of the steps within the process to be able to discuss it with our Board of Education. The second component is we will share with you our framework of what instruction will look like for students, for staff members, and what families can expect on that day. Talk about the communication, district level communication that families, students, and staff will receive, but also communication directly connected with virtual instruction, and then the access to technology, which it's called virtual learning. So we definitely want to make sure that that is lined up. And then at the very end, discussion and resolution for a vote. Next slide. Dr. Pugh will share information regarding the MSDE virtual requirements, which will help us have our discussion in a little bit more detail today.
Apologize. To make sure that what districts were doing were equitable across, or equal actually, across the districts, and that there were no advantages or disadvantages for each group. Montgomery County is well positioned to be able to take advantage of this because of the previous investments that they've made. On the slide, you'll see those main requirements, and as Dana said, last year the board approved a plan that had each of these areas spelled out about how these things would occur. Today's public presentation is part of that process. You need to have an open discussion, be able to take feedback, and then a vote in order to submit your plan. So local approval before state approval, and then should we need to or have an incident where we have an extended closure, be able to transition to this plan. As part of this plan, there are options for virtual, and it is asynchronous or synchronous. We are prioritizing the in-person, face-to-face, synchronous instruction because we believe that is the best way to continue with the pathway and the learning that our students are doing. Finally, the board has invested a great deal in creating an infrastructure that has the resources both for our students and for our schools and for our families to be able to offer in a quick pivot to virtual instruction based on an emergency or a weather-related event. Next slide, please.
So we'd like to talk a little bit about on inclement weather days, or if there's an emergency event, how would we get to the point where we would look at virtual as an option? And a little bit of what Mr. Hall said was, really thinking about how do we get to the point to make that decision. The safety of our students, our staff, and our families are always pivotal for us in terms of really coming to that point. And when any operational change occurs, due to an emergency weather situation, it's only made with necessary and careful review. So we do track the weather within the area. We make sure that we are connected with any weather event that is coming up. We are in the season of snow, ice, and we definitely keep in contact with that. Once we are aware that that is occurring, we do start to meet and consider the safety, the considerations, and really look at how we stay in contact with national and local weather experts to know what's happening within our area, within the Montgomery County area. And we do a high collaboration with local emergency and management officials, as well as the other municipalities within Montgomery County. And then we also consider the operating status and the accessibility to our location. So we definitely put safety as one of the pivotal areas. There are moments where we do need to modify our operations. And so if we were to consider virtual learning, a couple of things that we would definitely think about. Is the event predictable? When is the timing of it? Because one of the critical components is we want to let folks know that we would be able to do this. Another component is it a multi-day inclement weather event? We have not had a blizzard in a while, and I'll knock on wood for that. And it does not look like that one is coming. We do have some weather on the way in February, so this is great timing in order for us to talk about it. But we know after multiple days, we are out of that realm of instruction. We also start to tap into our days within the calendar, which may extend the school year. And this option would provide us an opportunity to end on time, give those who are going to summer school a break, staff as well as students and families, and it becomes predictable. And just going back to that fact of the level of being able to predict what's happening. And then we also want to be considerate of prior prep and communication that we definitely need to make in order to let folks know. So there are multiple factors that go into not only the decision-making around the operating status of schools and offices, but also if we would shift into a virtual learning day. Next slide, please. We'll talk some about what would instruction and scheduling look like through a shift to virtual learning.
So again, this is the same as last year's plan. To keep with the consistency, one of the requirements is that there be a minimum of 4 hours of synchronous instruction in order to count for an instructional day. So considering that, what we determined would be best for families and for schools and for teachers and for students was to use familiar and existing structures. So the 2-hour delay schedule for each school will be the schedule that the school uses to communicate with their families. Communication would come from the district at a high level about the fact that we're having and anticipating such an event and that people should take their devices home and prepare to be able to log on for the school day for the next day. And it will also come specifically from the school. The school will notify families and their students of what their specific schedule is in terms of courses. One of the pieces that we know is important because some of our staff and some of our families didn't experience virtual instruction. Our kindergarten students, this would be their first time. So we need to make sure that included as part of the instructional package, there's an orientation to that technology prior to such an event, right? So students know where to go, that it's simple. Advancements have been made in how to do that and how to make it accessible for our families. The other piece is, the big goal of this is to make sure that the instruction is uninterrupted. Like we were talking about earlier, when you have a disruption and a stop, it throws off the pace of all the instructional lessons, it throws off the sequence of school, and there's a lot of backtracking that has to be done when the students come back. So our goal would be to eliminate that by continuing the instruction with those priority standards as a focus. Specifically in the elementary, because there are multiple courses, focusing on mathematics and literacy, but also making sure that students have access to their specials. Given the situation, we would not be administering any district-wide assessments or any of the state assessments. That would just be very challenging for families to do, and also the results fairly unreliable when students are doing it on their own in their home. Also, we know that not all families will be able to access. There will be some barriers, so there's some grace period, maximum flexibility in terms of making up the work. So the idea is that all students are expected to do the work. All students will be supported in doing the work through that direct instruction, but if for whatever reason they are unable to access at that point, they can receive the instruction following that and make up that missed work. And finally, our students with disabilities, we are required to continue to provide those services. So if they see a service provider, we will continue to provide that virtually as well. And we're encouraging our paraprofessionals and our teachers to have shared logons so that when paraprofessionals are working in groups, that they can provide services in small groups. Next slide, please.
Thank you.
Sorry, Dana.
Thank you, Dr. Pugh. Pivotal to any change, we know that communication is a critical component, and really thinking about it through the standpoint of a district level, but also through that individual level at the school, directly into individual communities. And so readiness around this topic was really important, and so this created an opportunity for us to really enhance and make clear for our community just our operating status overall. What we've encountered is that when it is time for us to say schools are closed or schools are open, sometimes the messaging can get a little convoluted. What we learned from neighboring districts, county government even, as well as Homeland Security, is a color coding system, provides a really quick visual for people to be able to see, know, grasp onto, but then in addition, the details can follow. And so in order to make this transition, as we talk about upgrades, this was one of them for this year, very clear for everyone. We thought about 6 of our operating statuses that we always talk about, but we never narrowed them in. It was important to stay within the primary colors, because if you had too many colors, it started to get confusing. And so we narrowed it into colors that, one, many people could associate themselves with, but to keep it very clean. It would not just be for inclement weather days, but on a day like today when all schools are open, today would be a green day for MCPS. It's very clear for families to understand, for staff to understand, and for us to be able to broadcast out. So we have 6 colors. Green, of course, being full operations. There are no changes that are occurring. Yellow, if we have a 2-hour delay, which we must sometimes do to give ourselves a little bit of room in the morning to prepare the roads, the sidewalks, to be able to have people enter those facilities safely. There are times where we do need to close early. We come in the morning, we do a 2.5-hour delay, and that would be blue. And then sometimes our schools are closed completely and our offices are open, and that takes us into another color scheme. Red was most appropriate if all schools and offices are closed. When we are at that point, then that means that there may be some safety concerns for people to travel around, access to facilities, and we would definitely at that point in time, as well as within the other color systems, be working with county government officials as well as our counterparts in other counties. And then finally, our virtual learning day. And so because this is something, one, we didn't use last year, but we want to make it as easy and accessible and understandable as possible, purple would be the day that we selected in terms of that virtual learning day. We'd provide additional information for folks, but at least we would be able to show this color scheme on many of our websites, Twitter, and different components for people to be able to access. That's at the district level. The second level that we definitely have to think about are the details that would come from the school as well as central at the same time. On the next slide, one of the components that we know is so important in being prepared for virtual learning is having your devices. I remember going home one time, knowing we would have inclement weather, not knowing it was a multiple day event. And this was the time where you graded papers and wrote them in the grade book, and I left everything and we didn't go back to school for a week. That was prime time for me to grade and put things in, but I missed that opportunity. So for virtual learning, we have the commitment to say to our community, our greater MCPS community, get ready, this may be coming. Start to think about taking your information home. And if we're going to move to a virtual learning day, as we talked about earlier, we're looking at something we've been tracking, and that may be a multiple day event. And we want to let everyone know at least 24 hours in advance, noon the day before, that this is the stance in which we will switch to in order to adequately prepare, take your items home, and to be ready. So that decision we wanted to announce, but also to keep that communication flowing. And then our student well-being teams will be in contact with identified families as a reminder around virtual. That gives us that accountability for attendance, checking in with students, checking in with families to make sure they're able to access the instruction. And then finally, our schools would be able to remind families that it is a required school day and how to log into classes. And I think that login component is critical. Ms. Sharon will come behind us and talk about technology. We are a little rusty for those who have done it. And then, as Dr. Pugh said, we have families as well as kindergartners that this would be a brand new experience for them. Ms. Sharon?
Thank you, Ms. Edwards. My name is Stephanie Sharon, Chief of Strategic Initiatives and Technology. Good afternoon. Can we go to the next slide, please? So before I begin talking specifically about the virtual pivot, a potential pivot to virtual instruction, it's really important that I share what our mission in our technology offices is, and that is that technology serves as an equity and access to equity and an accelerator to equity, not a barrier for students. And that is how we approach all of our work in the technology office, which is why this work has actually started over the summer. So I want to start off with connectivity. As you know, during the pandemic, we started distributing MiFi devices to families that did not have broadband access at home. We have not stopped that practice. We continue to provide MiFi devices. Currently, we have about 13,000 that are already in circulation that students and families are actively using in their homes. We have ongoing work regularly with schools, principals, and community members around this need, and we're constantly cycling them out on a regular basis. The technology office provides district-wide communication around access to the MiFis, but more specifically, we work in a targeted way with the schools and school well-being teams, PPWs, PCCs, et cetera, when they're working with families and the need arises. So we are in strong collaboration, and like I said, we have about 13,000 to 14,000 MiFis out currently already in distribution, and we are ready to go with more as needed. Devices, as you know, we also started in the pandemic with a one-to-one device model. However, as we have gone back to in-person full-time instruction, schools have had an opportunity to adjust their device model a bit. Most of our secondary schools still do the one-to-one model where they carry their Chromebooks to and from school. However, schools also had the opportunity to choose to go back to a cart model where the Chromebook carts are in the classrooms, and that's primarily where they're used, and if necessary, a kid can check them out and take them home. This is the primary model in our elementary schools for our littlest learners, not carrying those devices back and forth. However, this could create a potential difficulty when you're switching to Pivotal. So we started planning for this in August. One of the things that we've done, because we want to make sure that our technology is an accelerator to equity, is we started in August communicating with families for those that are at CART model schools who need a device at home in addition to what their kid may be using at school. Families that need a device at home as well because maybe their child doesn't have access to that. So we have been in the process of distributing those out since August, and we have been ramping that up as we've been engaging in the weather and as we're engaging towards winter to make sure that families that need an extra device at home can have access to that. Currently, we have distributed 14,000 additional Chromebooks to those in CART model schools that need an additional Chromebook at home in an emergency pivot situation. But we also know that doesn't cover everything either. There are families that might not communicate that or maybe didn't see the message. We know that in order to have an all-encompassing approach, we needed to go a little deeper. So the going a little deeper is that we have ensured that every single school in Montgomery County is armed with enough Chromebook chargers, because that's the main problem with the carts. They're wired, the chargers are wired in, they're not easily dismantleable, so that you can take a Chromebook home. So we have created an opportunity for all schools to create a grab-and-go model quickly by providing additional Chromebook chargers to every single school based on the number of Chromebooks that we've checked out to families that asked for them at home. We've provided chargers for all of those other Chromebooks that may potentially need to go home in an emergency situation. So we were completely armed and ready to go as of December 22nd, with everybody having that need and covering that one-to-one device model. And then we get to the core collaborative technologies. Similarly to the pandemic, we are continuing with the utilization of Zoom and Canvas as main communication strategies as far as engaging in the virtual learning environment. We are working collaboratively with schools to really create that primary focus with Zoom. The end of the day, you can give assignments on Zoom and do all of those things on Zoom, but if people don't have access to the actual Zoom, it doesn't matter where anything else exists. So we have been working with our schools and created templates for our schools to be able to quickly and easily communicate all of the Zoom links that parents need in a manner that makes sense. And like I said, Canvas is going to continue to be that tool as well. We push out centralized resources on Canvas so that they're easily accessible to teachers as well. And then lastly, when we get to the learning opportunities and support, as Ms. Edwards noted, we know that there are some kids that have never experienced virtual learning because of where we are at in the cycle. And we also know that there's teachers, new teachers that maybe haven't had a lot of support with engaging in a virtual instructional environment. So we have created support structures in which to do that. So one of the upgrades that we have made are differentiated supports for both administrators, teachers, paras, substitutes, and students and families to make sure that they have what they need with a potential pivot. One of the things that we have created for schools are one-pagers, quick reference guides that have tools and resources for administrators, teachers, paras, students, and families. But from a centralized perspective, one of the things we're also doing is pushing out logins, username and login credentials for every student out to parents centrally to help schools with that messaging if we have to have an emergency pivot, so that people can say, oh, they can check their email, they can find those. Additionally, we also know, though, we have a very diverse community where there's diverse needs. A need at one school of how they support their community may look very different than another school. So our technology implementation team is also armed with working individually with schools and have already provided resources to teachers in how they go about supporting their school communities in the communication and messaging. We also are providing individualized support through central office for the teachers as well on the day of the pivot to make sure that everything is running smoothly. And I will turn it back over to Ms. Edwards.
Thank you. Next slide, please. That would be helpful. Key takeaways. The initial key takeaway, and I see the celebration, this does not replace a traditional snow day. However, it does provide us an option. If we do remember last year, we did have a few extra days at the end of our school year that we made up as a result of inclement weather. So this does provide us an option. We still have the opportunity to utilize a snow day, and that was why it was important, why we wanted to spend some time talking about how we would make that decision. So keep your snow tubes closed, your snow mittens, all those things will still be able to be utilized, but we want to continue to utilize and consider this for the future. It does limit instructional disruptions on inclement weather days. We know that consistent instruction is important. It decreases the lapse. It keeps students connected to their teachers, their friends as well. And we know that that is a necessary need within our district. The early notification for preparation purposes is critical. Ms. Sharon talked about a lot of different components in terms of just the technology that needed to happen, but also letting people know so that they can be prepared for instruction, but also how to format their day. When we make that notification as well, and we talked about the color code system, we will also embed information around meals that will be available to our community during those days. We've identified 20 sites in different geographical parts of the district where we will make available a grab and go almost, where folks can come in, be able to pick up the meals, because again, we want to make sure that you do have that resource, but that we don't interrupt instruction. And so we're still building out that plan so that we keep in mind that we're talking about a whole cluster. And we're also looking at possibly even Turkey Thicket as an opportunity because of that way in which folks can come in and be able to utilize that. So we did not want to limit that resource or not consider that as a part of the planning. And then finally, we talked about a lot of supports for staff, students, and family. And then number 5, which coincides with number 1, we want to, as much as possible, ensure that our school year is not extended beyond June 16th. And so we've been given a great opportunity from MSDE. We come before you today just with our application, our approach, our thoughts in terms of moving this forward. And at this point, President Silvestri will open it up for discussion and questions from the board.
So if my colleagues will turn their lights on, maybe 2 at a time, so we don't cancel the staff microphones. So I just want to remind me, for this calendar year, we have how many snow, quote, days? 8? No.
At this point in the year, we have 1 left at the end of the.
How many budgeted for the whole year?
That number, I would have to take a look at. I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me.
Okay.
But if you give me a second, I'll take a look.
And my next question is, how many of the, if it snows 8 times this year, how many of those will be?
We build in 5.
Traditional snow days where everything's closed, no instruction, and how many will be these virtual instruction days?
So we built in 2 inclement weather days at the very end of our calendar year. We have currently used 1. However, one of the things that the board has been doing for the past couple of years is taking days throughout the year, pretty much on the professional development days at the end of the marking period, and identifying those days as options for us to use as an actual day, as a makeup day for us to be able to utilize. At this point, we have approximately 3 of those left that we can utilize that are embedded within the instructional calendar.
Let me rephrase my question. So students want to know how many real snow days they're going to have. If it were this year.
Understandable.
What is the answer to that?
We have 1 day that is left at the end.
No, not left, total.
We build in 5 into our calendar.
True snow days.
2.
True, with the ability to make up days. So, in other words, they're like the school day. I don't know, Mr. Hollis is.
Let me maybe add some clarity. So we're required by the state to have 180 instructional days. We have 182 days in our calendar. So that leaves 2 days that could be canceled without any additional impact. One of those was used during the plane crash, so we have 1 remaining. There are an additional, I want to say 4, but I'd have to get back with the exact number, of days that are slated for professional development or a makeup day if we had to switch. In addition to that, there are 3 days at the end of the school year that were identified as potential makeup days. And so we could have 1 additional traditional snow day with no impact. After that, we would have to start switching some of these PD days into makeup days as they're identified on the calendar. Beyond that, we would have 3 days at the end of the school year where we've already identified as makeup days that could be extended. Does that answer your question?
So for students, in that example, it would be 4
Correct.
snow days without instruction.
Yes.
potentially the decision would have to be made because that would then sacrifice a PD day for teachers. And so the decision would have to be made, do we instead use this virtual option if we had, say, a multi-day event so that we could maintain those PD days for our teachers? And that would kind of be the decision point for the superintendent.
I guess the point I'm trying to make is that, which you made in your presentation, is what we know is traditional snow days are not going away. There will be some that are traditional snow days and some that will be virtual instruction.
Kids can still sleep with their pajamas inside out every once in a while.
Ms. Nadrowski.
Well, I just want to say thank you for the presentation. I mean, I think it's a great plan. I think you guys did a lot of really good work on this, and I love the improvements from this year's plan and whatever. So I don't necessarily have any question. Well, one's kind of a question, but just a couple of points. Whenever we make the decision making sure that, I like the color-coded thing. Sometimes we make things more complicated in communication-wise than we need to. And I like the fact that you could potentially put out a text message that reads, today is a blue day, or today is a purple day, and click here to find out more information, or, it'll be a virtual day. It's a purple day. Click here to find out what that means so people can really keep it simple and just know what they're looking for. And just clarifying to Ms. Silvestre's point that reminding people to take things home in preparation of potential bad weather doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a virtual day, because I can envision kids being like, oh, I didn't take my stuff home, so I can't participate, because they're afraid that it's definitely going to be a definite that they have to do school at home. And then my only, and I appreciate the ability for us to still maintain hubs for kids to get food and stuff like that. That was something that years ago we established, and when we had, 2 weeks off or something, and it was incredible, and it's made a big difference in a lot of people's lives. But the only other question that I had was, if we are concerned about families not being aware of the ability to request, I love that we're doing that and making sure that some families have the ability to have them at home, even if they keep it at school, so they don't have to go back and forth every day. But just as part of our families who apply for farms, could that be a sort of part of the application in a way? Like, if you apply for farms, you automatically are notified that you have the ability to have a device at home if necessary. I was just thinking it might be a way of ensuring that people feel it's an additional inspiration for people signing up for farms if they need it, and be a way of us knowing that it's somebody out there that might not have thought to reach out to them.
Very good. If I may, just wanted to follow up on your comments, Ms. Nadrowski. So I'm glad you brought up the point about the food. It has been a shared commitment in our entire community that we want none of our children to be impacted by not receiving food if something happens in operations. And what we saw during COVID-19 was that we were able to do it in so many different ways and with so many different partners. I wanted to alert you to one thing that we found out in our effort to address this moving forward, is that the state, in its provisions, sometimes that don't always catch up to what we've learned in COVID-19, have provided guidance around funding for food being provided under specific conditions. And one specific condition was that we had to provide a dining space for people if we wanted to feed them, and in a way to be funded. I just wanted to alert you to this and our community, because I know we have, and I appreciate our food advocates in our community. We will be working with the state on the fact that we have found a way in Montgomery County to feed our families in the grab-and-go option, as we've learned through COVID-19. And we want to be able to provide that for our community, and we would hope that we would be able to continue to get funding from the state to do that. So I just wanted to let you know that, like right now, of course, Mr. Hull can share, we've been provisioning for this through ESSER funds, but I'm going to continue to say that will not be with us in the foreseeable future. And so we need to plan for any provisions that need to be done in those other spaces in terms of working with the state on their guidance so that we can continue to be funded for these types of situations.
Can I ask you a clarifying question on that then? So I know a lot of, even though we do have the schools open and for people to grab and go and things like that, we do still have a lot of families who don't have either the means or the transportation to get to the school if the bus service isn't there. And I know that a lot of our community officers, I forget what they call them now. CEOs, thank you. Will frequently, I know personally from talking that they'll take a bunch and they'll deliver them to homes where they know that those families aren't going to be able to get there, as do some volunteers sometimes come and fill up carloads full of stuff. Will that count?
So great point that you're bringing up, which is why I said earlier, we've learned that we are able to feed our community beyond the school system.
Yes.
Perfect example. That's what we've learned. Our CEOs, all of our community advocates, really, our faith-based group, so many people help to feed the families. Our first step is to secure funding for a model of being able to provide food without having to have the dining space. On that, I think in our first step, as we lay out what our plan is, a part of that will be how we're utilizing, our community to help us provide that service to our students appropriately, much like we're doing for our out-of-school time. So I can liken it to that other initiative that we have moving forward. But I just wanted to alert you to that because that's something that we're going to be working on because we believe we should be funded for that opportunity for our community.
Good advocacy.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Ms. Yang?
Yes, thank you so much for the presentation and of how thoughtful all the different scenarios that you thought about so that make this go smoothly for our families. I have a clarifying question and I have a comment. So to answer also Mrs. Smodrowski's question about the Chromebook, and I know the county has Montgomery Connect program that provide any residents 7 and above a digital device, computer to use at home if they meet the income requirement, which our farm students will meet the requirement. So there are other opportunities for our families to get devices. My clarifying question is, I love the color coding, it's wonderful. So is this how we are communicating with families now? Like today is a green day, do we actually, if it's not, like after we approve it, is it how we're going to communicate with families?
That's a great question, Ms. Yang. We're not currently communicating with families in that manner.
Okay.
Right now, if there is any change in the operational status, whether it be for the whole district or certain schools, we have used our traditional methods of emails, calls, Twitter, the news, to be able to articulate that information. And it's usually been in text. Just in written out narrative. So this would be a shift for us.
So when will it start?
We would like to be able to share this after the board votes today, to be able to just share this information with our families. We also will be working with our principals to include in their Connect-Ed calls, placing the information on their school pages. We also had a recommendation to see how we could get the information to students so that they were able to see it on a daily basis. So that one is a softer shift for us in terms of what we're doing. And then as far as moving the information to the front of the web page, we're still working with our web page teams, and they've been awesome in terms of, bless you, Mr. Kim, being able to make sure that this is something that's legitimate and that we could pull through.
Thank you for that. And I know that we have right now a couple of school-to-school that's innovative calendar schools. We might have more in the future. So even during the summer months, if we need to communicate with those community, so consistency is important. And another clarifying question is about the student actually logging in the communication going to the families. We mentioned about, there are students who have not gone through the virtual school. Is this, I'm thinking about the secondary level, Are these links going to be embedded in the Clever or in their Canvas page for the specific classes? So that, at the beginning of last time we switched to virtual learning, I remember receiving an email that's this long with all different teachers' Zoom link. We don't want to repeat that now. We have learned our lessons, have improved on it. So I just want to ask a clarifying question.
Yes, absolutely. And it'll be differentiated based on the needs of the kids. How we approach communication with a kindergarten class versus the secondary will be different. But that is exactly what will happen. We know our secondary students are actively using Canvas, and they'll be embedding it right in. And we are also going to make sure that there's practice done in the schools as well, for the schools that maybe, for the littler learners, so that they know what they're going to be walking away with.
Thank you for that.
I'm going to go to Ms. Harris and then Ms. Rivera-Aven.
Oh, yeah, thank you. And I just want to echo what's been said about really appreciating sort of the kind of very deep substance of this plan and how it's been thought out. And really, I know our communities really appreciate the runway that you've envisioned here with, predicting out well in advance, this could be coming. Stay tuned. And, with that as an opportunity to reinforce, here's our code, this is what you'll see. And ensuring that people are really very well informed. And I did, a clarifying question, I think you said 20 hubs would be available for food. That's the plan?
Correct. 20 sites, 20 elementary school sites would be available for food in different geographical parts of our county.
And that'd be part of the messaging?
Absolutely. It would be part of the messaging, and we would include which sites would be accessible, because we want to make sure they're accessible and safe and they have the necessary products.
Yeah, okay, yeah, good, thank you. And one of a question too, our virtual academy, will they be impacted at all with this, or will they just continue to operate as they operate? Because they're virtual anyway.
Do they? Yeah. They have our same calendar, right?
I mean, would they, for instance, you mentioned that the plan would be to operate on a 2-hour delay. But I would assume, would that virtual academy too, or is it just a regular day?
I would say it's the same calendar, it's the same operating status. When we are closed, they typically are not offering instruction on those particular days, so we'd align. There's something we need to consider with our messaging. We can connect back with them to make sure that we are all aligned and we're making it clear for their families as well.
Okay.
I just wanted to, yes, the virtual academy would need to follow the same schedule, because every time we're dealing with a weather event, we have to think about the staff impacted and the conditions, as well as what's happening with the student. And staff, who, we have staff all over who are doing many different things, and so we just have to take that in consideration. And with that, if we have a snow day in which, we're not operating as a system, even how we pay our employees, all those things are connected on the system of that, and they are a part of that. So that's why it would be necessary to be consistent.
Sure.
Okay?
Thank you, yeah.
Absolutely.
And we were talking a little bit earlier in the week, I think, that we are by no means the only LEA in Maryland that is taking advantage of this and producing a plan like this. I bet this one is really an example for others as to how well thought out it is. But do we know if any LEAs are not taking advantage of this opportunity to, just wondering?
I don't know if any LEAs are not. I know that many have put their plans together. They have focused on this. Our surrounding districts, Howard and Baltimore County, Anne Arundel and Prince George's, yes, they have. They've submitted their plans for this, an application, I would say.
Yeah,
I will add that last year, after COVID-19, all of the LEAs came together and actually went to the state about this is a great opportunity to address inclement weather collectively. So I would be very surprised if there is one out there that is not exercising this option.
Yeah, because it's so much better to to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. More tools, better to address. And this is just an esoteric question, and I've never seen it come up, but if we had a school year in which we never had to close, would we take days off at the end of the school year and close sooner? Since we have extra days, wondering.
We have not done that. We have not done that in the past. And I will be very honest with you, given all the work that we need to, and want to do with students moving forward after the pandemic, I would say that is more instructional time that we would want to be able to take advantage of for our
It's
students.
always something. Plane crashes on taking out the power.
And that's true. This year we had something.
Yeah, but really, thank you again.
Ms. Rivetta Oven.
Thank you so much. A lot what I was going to ask has been asked, and I just want to say thank you for the work, for the preventive work that you're doing. I do, though, want to say that with food insecurity, even though that we will have addressed and seen the 20 elementary schools, that there's still a lot of barriers for families, especially those families without transportation. And I do want us to keep in mind that ride-on is no longer free.
What?
Ride-on is, yeah. So it's, so just keep in mind some of these barriers that we might be able to advocate for it to be free again. Just saying, food insecurity is very close to my heart, as many of you know. But I do have a few questions about the kindergartens. You mentioned that there's going to be a training for them. I was just wondering the timeline on that training and how many kids we're talking about. And also the 2,000 plus kids who started school with us who had not been part of virtual learning before. What is the plan to bring them on board to make sure that they have all the equipment and the understanding how to do virtual learning? And again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but ways of communication, we really need to work harder to come out of our comfort zone of just doing the antiquated ways and get on the page of a lot of parents and kids. So again, I'm going to advocate for WhatsApp and also Cigna, which is another new way that many families, especially many immigrant families, communicate through. You mentioned that there were 14,000 students, families, I think, who have taken advantage already of taking the charges and all the equipment. So I'm just wondering how many are out there that have not.
Okay, so to address the littlest learners conversation, that's really where we're differentiating the support by school with the technology implementation specialists. I think what's important to know and understand is that they've already started these communications. We've been working with the school principals to make sure that the kids know how to log on. But what's more important is that for our littlest learners, the parents know how to log on. So we've been working with our principals to make sure that our parent community knows how to log into some of these, because they're the ones that are going to have to help their kid in these situations. One of the things that I do want to note that on the MCPS webpage, we have modified and updated where all of this information is occurring. We've modified and updated text shorts. We got a lot of feedback from our community around the fact that a lot of giving our community a lot of support through writing and a lot of directions was overwhelming. So it was easier for them to see short videos. So we have created a number of text shorts to help families get started and translated them into all 7 of our languages so that they are easily accessible to our community. I'm trying to remember, because you said what was your last question, your last point?
The 14,000 kids.
Yes, about the number.
And what about the ones who have not, and what is the plan for that?
Right. So the plan for that is exactly, so for regular instruction, if a child needs a Chromebook at home in a CART model school, they do, a lot of the elementary schools, they have a check-in, check-out where they can just give it to them. As far as for a emergency situation, we have 14,000 out, but what we did is we provided chargers at all of the schools. So if we make the call at noon, those teachers are going to be armed and ready to do the grab-and-go option for the rest of the students that need it, and they will be able to give the Chromebook, the charger to take home for any child that needs it, so that everybody's covered.
And then for the newcomers who came into the system this past year, we know who they are and what schools they are, and I'm just wondering what the outreach would be.
Yes, so when they're coming to their school, they're being provided the necessary technology that they need. And like I said, we are working with our schools to make sure that we are targeting the support and what the language needs, for instance, might be for their community in a supportive way through both our collaboration with school support and well-being, as well as our technology implementation team.
I love the idea that you guys are doing videos, because I think that's so important. That's something that we actually did with the test kits, to show people exactly how to do it correctly, better than, reading, because we know that there's some limitations also on reading in some of our communities. So visualization, I think, is always welcomed. So I'm just wondering that, and it's wonderful that you have them in the 7 languages. If there is a way, especially in Title I schools and others, that you can actually send the videos to the parents instead of having them log on, get a password, blah, 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 sorry. But just send it out to them ahead of time so they already have that information.
Absolutely, and that will definitely be part of the communication plan.
Just a couple questions on my end. First of all, I'm very happy to hear that we're having synchronous learning. Again, to keep up with the instruction that we know we need to deliver, we got to keep it as normal as possible. But my question is, why a 2-hour delay? Why not start at the regular start time?
I think there's a multi-pronged response to this. I think one of the things is that Ms. Edwards can share is a little bit about the negotiated agreements that we have with MCEA. But one of the things that I think is most important is that we are providing both families and students and staff the support before virtual instruction occurs. So one of the things that we're setting up through the tech office, when we talk about those teachers that may not be as familiar, and you're having to do your whole lesson in a virtual environment, which is very, very new. We're setting up Zoom sessions for teachers all across the county from a central office perspective to be able to provide that one-on-one support to teachers, for instance, during those 2-hour blocks. There's many schools that are setting up Zooms individually for their parents and their communities during that time too, to say, do you have Q&A? Jump on this Zoom, because it's easier than trying to pick up phones. So I think that support is one of the primary reasons, but I don't know if there's additional.
I'll jump in on the other end and just say when we invented the plan last year and we had the discussion, it goes to what Ms. Sharon said in terms of everyone needing the time in the morning. We also, in working with our associations, the 2 hours for planning and preparation for teachers to be ready for that instruction, especially because it's live instruction. And so that was really, really important to be able to provide that time and opportunity.
Great, thank you. And since it's budget season, I have a budget question. How did you pay for the additional 14,000 Chromebooks?
So I may have to pull my team up to make sure that I am giving accurate information, but this is part of the Chromebook inventory that we have. They're the older Chromebooks, not the newer Chromebooks that we've been distributing to staff, to the students. So they are the ones that we've kind of had on hand in the warehouse that we don't use for actual regular everyday instruction for the kids. So we had them.
Thank you. Mr. Kim?
Thank you. So as you all know, I think there's 2 primary concerns with this model. The first being that equity piece around access to resources and ensuring every student is able to log in, and the second being the ask of teachers that by nature is going to come up with inclement weather, being able to make that pivot. What I so appreciate about this plan is really taking those considerations to heart, providing solutions to really mitigate the effects they have. But I think to some extent that those are intrinsic challenges. And I do have a specific ask about that equity piece in a second. But, students will, as much as the efforts lie, even thinking back to 2 years ago, there's going to be a challenge in ensuring every student has the access to resources, is informed, and ready to log on, at the snap of a finger with the school day. And the same goes for the ask of teachers, especially elementary school teachers, where not being in person poses, really different learning environment. Of being able to pivot, even, I think that commitment to making that communication as soon as possible is really valuable, is really important, and will be really appreciated. But even if it's, by nature, hopefully next year's plan will include a way to control the weather. But until then, by nature, even if it's noon the day before, it's a big ask of teachers to prepare to pivot. And as much as we want to see this as a way to eliminate disruption, I think it really ends up being a question of what's the best way to mitigate disruption. Because even one virtual day in a week of in-person traditional learning, having to make that snap pivot is going to in some ways disrupt the learning experience. So I wanted to raise those and continue to have those as challenges that I think are prevailing challenges. Should this be an option considered, after today moving forward, I hope that those considerations will continue to remain at the forefront of the decision-making process. And then the one more specific question I did have to ask was around that access to technology and materials. Have we been able to at all, and I'm sure it's impossible to really grasp with 100% certainty, but kind of estimate and quantify, what percentage of our students can we expect to be ready to log on, to have that access to resources? Where are we as a county, prepared to make that pivot within, a day? So I think that if we haven't already been able to do that, that's an important question to grapple with and prepare for. But I just wanted to raise those concerns and questions. Thank you.
Dr. McKnight?
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Kim, for that. We work with the county closely on making sure that generally overall we deal with the broadband access issue. We learned a lot through that whole process, and you're right, just taking that into consideration, all that is required in that process of getting ready for it. It's just not like just rolling out and it's just being ready to go. But you bring up a good point about the staff. I thought about two things I wanted to raise to the board. Those of you who were on the board for more than a year, if you remember, we had staff come forward, and I remember it was many of our SEIU staff coming forward and saying that, it became confusing to a certain extent about who came to work and who shouldn't on these inclement weather days. This color-coded system actually was one that was envisioned to help address that problem so that we could bring complete clarity to the staff, given, who's coming in for an emergency and all those cases. So that was one way to resolve that. The second piece that I raised earlier about the meal situation and us doing our advocacy with the state is if we were required, in order to be paid for food that we provided to our families on virtual learning days defined by the state, if we were required to have a dining space, that would be an enormous amount of staff that would have to come in to even provision for that. And the fact of the matter is, we are appreciative and so appreciate our staff who do come out in these emergency situations. But we also wouldn't want to be expected to provide a model that we couldn't even staff, because people would have to, again, get to the locations. And the more people you expect to do that, the more chances you decrease in having that actually happen, depending on what the conditions are. So also really thinking in consideration of what we can provide, what we need to provide for our community and can do it in the best possible way with partners is our option to do that, where it doesn't become an a weight on the staff that we actually know we wouldn't be able to meet in terms of an expectation. So those were things that I wanted to bring to your attention around considerations of the staff in this model that would also allow us to still be able to provide our community with what they need to do. And the staff, I want to thank you. I mean, I know across the offices, I see you all in the audience, at the table, did a lot of work to take all of those considerations into consideration been in this plan, and much of it is from the feedback that we've received from our community and what we've learned forward, so I want to thank you for that. I think we're ready to read the resolution for the board to approve, and we can read the whereas, a few of those, and the resolve.
All right, I will give the team here a breather, and I'll read the resolution for us. All right, whereas virtual learning provides an opportunity for continuity of instruction on days when school buildings are closed due to inclement weather. And whereas the Maryland State Department of Education, building on the success of the opportunities provided in the 2021-22 school year, has opened a pathway for local education agencies to repurpose certain days as virtual instruction days in the 2022-23 school year. And whereas synchronous virtual learning on inclement weather days counts toward the 180 days of instruction required each year by the state of Maryland, and whereas the adopted 2022-23 traditional and innovative school year calendars include stakeholder input and have additional built-in inclement weather days and contingency makeup days, and whereas the Board of Education approved a framework for virtual learning days when it was introduced by the Maryland State Department of Education during the 2021-22 school year. And whereas the same framework exists in the 2022-23 school year plan and has been updated, now therefore be it resolved that the virtual day instruction plan aligns with the parameters established by the Maryland State Department of Education, and be it further resolved that upon approval of the Maryland State Department of Education, the superintendent of schools may use discretion when transitioning to virtual learning on days when school buildings are closed due to inclement weather, or other days that may interrupt regular in-person operations.
Move approval.
I second.
All in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
That is unanimous. Oh, I'm sorry. All,
Opposed?
opposed? So we have all in favor except one opposed. Thank you. So now we can move on to our next agenda item. Item 7.0, Blueprint for Maryland's Future Initial Implementation Plan.
All right. Thank you again to all the staff. And we are going to transition from talking about our virtual learning plan to the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. Large system transformational work. It seems as though we're having conversations daily this week about the blueprint. So this presentation was very timely. And speaking of the discussions that we've had, it was so good for us to, again, begin the joint boards meeting that we had this week, along with members of the Board of Education from MCPS, members of the boards also from Montgomery College and University of Shady Grove. And it was great to be able to have a conversation about the blueprint, knowing that it is going to take the entire educational ecosystem to really build out this plan for us and for our children here in Montgomery County and our students who go into careers here in Montgomery County. So, you know, a couple of things I jotted down from the joint boards meeting this past Tuesday. There was an elevation around the importance of progress monitoring and data collection and how key that will be as we approach brand new work that we are establishing for the first time. And we said 5 or 10 years from now, we do not want to look back and say that the blueprint was a great policy, but nothing changed for students in Montgomery County. That's what we said was important to us the other day. And so with that, as a district, we continue to ask ourselves the question, what is the intended outcome? What do we want to accomplish in this plan for the blueprint? How will we know that we achieve that or those outcomes? And how will we know if we're on track to achieve the outcome, which comes down to the importance of monitoring? So the blueprint presentation today is going to it's a report due to the Maryland State Department of Education, because they're expecting LEAs to be able to submit our plans for that, and it's our way of answering the questions that I just mentioned. You know, what are our outcomes? How are we going to monitor it? And how will we know that we would have achieved those outcomes? So we plan this presentation so that you can be informed about the expectations of just that. What are we going to be monitoring? How are we going to monitor that? And what does it look like when we achieve it? And how are we, going to systemically and as a community champion and challenge what Honorable Ike Leggett said, former county executive, now leader of the AIB? How are we going to get in the water with this for Montgomery County, and what is that going to look like? So again, I am grateful because we have staff who have been deeply invested in this work and doing this work. Ms. Backey, we're glad to welcome you back to the table. You were here just a few months ago as we were talking about this, and now we are going to continue the conversation and excited to do so. And Dr. Kristen Wong-Callisto, we are excited to bring her in, who she's been working with Ms. Backey on this. And so I will now turn the presentation over to them with no further ado. Thank you so much for the work that you have done around this Blueprint for Maryland.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Today I am absolutely delighted to be working in tandem with Dr. Kristen Wong-Callisto in presenting and discussing the Blueprint reporting requirements and the Blueprint initiatives. I'd also like to thank all of our leaders, folks in our offices, our schools, and our community partners who are working with us to help meet these requirements and to realize the charge of the Blueprint. I'd like to also thank our stakeholders. Some we have been working with, some we will be reaching out to in the future, who will help us to gather important feedback that we'll need over the next few years in moving forward in the Blueprint. So now I'll just turn it over to Dr. Wong-Callisto.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I am so excited to be in front of you. I may or may not have planned to wear a Blueprint dress today because I was in the spirit. Next slide, please. So I want to walk you through what you can expect in our presentation. We're going to provide people with some brief context and overview. We know that our listening public may have varying background information, so we want to bring everybody up to the same page. We're going to walk through what are the intended outcomes from this Blueprint initial implementation plan, and then talk through what we know to be the defining metrics of the plan, what you can expect inside of it, as well as on a meta level, what you can expect in terms of success for the plan itself. Then we will talk about next steps, and then open it up for any questions or discussions that you'd like to have. And I think it's important to note that in this presentation, we've really driven to take what is the template itself is actually 100 pages, just a template. And then there's also an accompanied guide booklet. So we've attempted to distill all of that into a brief, informative presentation for you. I recognize that we are actually presenting a report on a report, and arguably you could read the document on the website. But we believe really strongly that the Blueprint for Maryland is not just any other plan, but instead what we're seeking is the community to be invested in this effort for their children, because we're seeking not compliance with completion of a plan, but actually that this plan is a catalyst for us to be different as an educational system. So that's why we've chosen to come and present what you can expect in this plan, rather than simply just posting it on our website and expecting people to just follow along. So next slide. One thing for us all to be aware of is the Blueprint for Maryland Future did not come out of the ethers and is something totally different that we have to do. In fact, it quite nicely aligns with the Board of Education priorities, as well as our existing five-year strategic plan that we have for MCPS. And so just to highlight some of the intersectionality pieces, we want to point out that the Blueprint pillars, which you will see in a forthcoming slide, talk about professional and operational excellence, strategic recruitment to increase high-quality, diverse workforce. Of course, academic excellence, which include a focus on improving mathematics and literacy achievement and increasing the percentage of students graduating and college and career-ready rates. It's also important that we talk about supporting students socially and with their emotional well-being, and for us, as a district, we have prioritized our commitment to increasing equity and capacity. And you see the Blueprint as a piece of policy that is really well supporting our already existing aims as a district. The other thing that I think is important for us to realize is the blueprint charges us to not just take on this transformative effort solely as MCPS, an educational system. It truly takes a village. And so with that in mind, we are regularly conversing with our county government partners to make sure that there are corresponding infrastructure support to make sure that these pillars get executed as outlined in the legislation. I think fundamentally when we think about I had a conversation with the Honorable Ike Leggett before the joint board started, and one of the things that we talked about is transformation is not about tinkering around the edges, right? We're not asking our staff to just adjust what they've already done. We're asking them to radically change in certain places. And so it's important to make sure that we have accountability and a plan for these big, ambitious goals that we have, both in our strategic plan and both in the blueprint. Next slide. So I want to talk about the reporting outcomes, which is another way of saying the intended outcomes for this plan from MSDE. What you can expect is that there are, in the next slide we will see, that there are 2 reporting timelines. And the actually go back. I shouldn't have used that word. So what you should see is that the intended outcome for these plans is to make sure that MSDE, the public at large, are aware of how we are actually implementing this particular piece of legislation. You have to remember that this plan is not a 1-year plan. It's not a 5-year plan. It's actually explicitly stated in the policy as a 10-year plan. So anything that takes place over that period of time requires us to have some sort of documentation to institutionalize the work that has been done and the work that is going to be done. So that is one of what we perceive as the intended outcomes for the plan. Secondly, it's about establishing trend data as well as checking on progress monitoring, right? And so this initial plan is designed to say, hey, where are we now, so that we can later on say, are we on track? And are we on our way to actually hitting success markers? So those are the 2 reporting objective outcomes: implementation reporting to the state and to the public, but also making sure that we are collecting appropriate data so that we can assess in real time and make adjustments. All right, next slide. Okay, at first glance, the slide looks identical. And so, in fact, if you look really carefully, you'll see that there's a first submission, which will be on March 15th, 2023. The reason why we're here is because there are lots of people who, right now, at this very moment, are probably working on components of the draft. And so, yes, that timeline is March 15th, but we already are expecting initial drafts in the next coming days. We have an iterative cycle to get feedback before it eventually gets submitted. Then what will happen is we know that next year there will be another reporting requirement, and this will be more forward-looking to projecting plans, what to expect in the next couple of years of implementation. So this slide just kind of helps contextualize what this initial implementation plan will be, and then what you can expect next year in 2024 when there is the next version of the plan. Next slide. So this is a helpful graphic to remind people, if you have not been familiar or are conversant with the blueprint, that there are in fact 5 pillars that the policy outline that expect that sort of have criteria, data metrics, et cetera, associated with them. So I'm just going to read them because I think it's really important that people are aware of all of the pillars. So the first pillar is obviously early childhood and expansion, right? It begins with early intervention and when we first get our young children into the educational system. The second pillar is high quality teachers and diverse leaders. We talk quite a bit about making sure that we have the right teachers and educators in front of our students so that they can get the kind of education that they need to be pillar 3, college and career ready, including CTE. Now, all of this can't be done without money and resources. And so Pillar 4 talks about the need to not only have plans on the instructional side, but what are the operational infrastructure component that we need to do to make sure that the resources are going to the students who need them the most. And that's one of the reasons why the blueprint coordination actually resides in the Office of the Chief of Staff, because I hope you're starting to recognize that the work of the blueprint requires the entire district. It doesn't just reside in instruction. It doesn't just reside in operation. It doesn't even just reside with us. It resides with our county partners as well. And so finally, the last pillar is governance and accountability. Now, the next couple of slides are really text-dense, and we've intentionally left them in, and Janine will be going over them, because they actually outline some of the example metrics that are expected in the presentation. We've chosen to keep these slides in because we recognize that some of our public may choose to get this information by reading our material. Some may be watching, so they can pause and read this if they'd like to in more detail. So we just wanted to make sure that the information was accessible in multiple different ways. So Janine will take us through each of the pillars and some of the example metrics that can be expected per the template. Oh, next slide.
Very briefly, early childhood education and expansion, all of these bullets represent all of the discrete data points that will be collected as a part of the report. Essentially, it's about operationalizing pre-K expansion, looking at family supports, working with our community partners as we develop a mixed delivery community-based system in Montgomery County for pre-K. Also, the implementation plan template and the guidance documents are also in electronic form on the website for the viewing public, so in case folks have questions about that. Next slide. High-quality teachers and diverse leaders. These are the discrete data points of information that we'll be collecting. Essentially, it's talking about the expansion of nationally board-certified teachers in the district, diversity hiring, building the capacity of our staff, establishing and working towards building a career ladder, ensuring educator compensation targets are met in alignment with the blueprint law. Next. College and career readiness, including career and technical education, CTE. This one is asking us to report data points that relate to meeting the college and career standards and equity for all students, the expansion of CTE programs, and looking at subgroup progress in English language arts and math, and supports for our students in helping them to meet college and career readiness standards, and also monitoring their progress towards graduation, looking at starting at the 9th grade, tracking their progress towards graduation, including credit accumulation. Next. More resources to ensure all students are successful. This is really looking at progress monitoring and supports that are provided for students who are very highly impacted, students with disabilities, English language learners, and those students who are, his families have limited income. Looking at the expansion of community schools and those wraparound services that are provided for them, and then also the well-being of our students, and also training for staff related to well-being of students. Next. Governance and accountability really relates to the Accountability and Implementation Board and all of the related reporting that will happen over the next 10 years. So who are the folks that are involved in the development of the Blueprint Comprehensive Plan? Looking at stakeholder engagement with the Board of Education. There's a new statewide finance system that will be in place, and it looks at fiscal accountability in terms of a new system that the state will use to monitor the blueprint dollars and the implementation. Next.
And I hope for anyone watching this, I know that when I talk to members of our community, they each have individual things that they're really interested in. I just met with a group very briefly yesterday that was really interested in the expansion of pre-K. So I'm hoping that they now know that when this report comes out, they know where to go to see what are our baseline metrics and where we can, oh, yes, sorry. Let me start all over. So, for our public, what I was saying is I recognize that some of you may have some specific interest. And so, for example, I met with a group that recently had an interest in the expansion of pre-K. So you now know that when this report comes out, you can come out and look and see Pillar 1, see your metrics, find maybe perhaps your question answered. Maybe you find something that we're missing and you want to give some feedback. This is the way for the community to continue to be engaged and involved in the transformation of our educational system. Now, we haven't seen, or at least I haven't seen, any of the initial drafts yet, but we did want to say that there are some highlights that we want to point out for you. So one is we anticipate that there should be an intersection of the blueprint work with our effort toward being an anti-racist system. Because the reality is, as any educator knows, we don't want the blueprint to be yet another thing that gets added to the plate. Instead, what this should be is a sense-making tool that brings everything together that the district is trying to do to help you implement the work. The other thing that we want to highlight is that there is an emphasis on social well-being in addition to academic progress. It is important, I think, especially in light of what we're all aware of as we move through the pandemic recovery, that we need to be making sure we're taking care of the entire child. As you know, from a well-established body of research in neuroscience, a happy child is the one that learns the best. So we're really pleased to see that the blueprint continues to have that, but as we move through the realities of coming out of the pandemic and remote learning, we may continue to seek opportunities to offer feedback about where we can strengthen that particular component of the plan. The thing that I also wanted to highlight is one of the things I love the best about Dr. McKnight's leadership is she always asks us to do more. And so I've heard her say several times that the blueprint is just the floor. It's not the ceiling. And as we know, every elevator always has to start on the ground floor. So for this initial plan, we are just getting in on the ground floor, and let's see how high we can go on this journey towards educational transformation. Next slide. There are going to be areas to watch for. As we are aware, any policy lives in a different space when it comes time to the pragmatics of actually implementing it. And as the largest school district in Maryland, we are uniquely positioned to advocate and elevate real challenges that we're facing in the implementation of this ambitious policy. One of the things that I know we've come and talked before the board about is being aware that there are going to be fiscal implementation to the blueprint. In my past work in state policy, we often put out these really lovely pieces of policy and then ask the LEA to figure out how to foot the bill. And so with that in mind, some of the things that we can anticipate is we know that some of the pillars, for example, unknown cost of the development of a career ladder. We are very supportive of that, but that is going to obviously take some dollars and resources. We also know that college and career readiness, we are all about supporting the equity of access to tuition, for example, for dual enrollment. But where does that funding come from? We need to make sure that we can adequately provide that. The expansion of pre-K comes with lots of complication, especially the sort of this unique challenges as we've seen lots of our child care centers close as a result of the pandemic, just as we're about to try to push for an expansion. So how do we make sure that for our early learners, we are responding appropriately to the realities on the ground while also meeting the ambitious aim of this policy? So there are areas to watch for. There are areas that we're going to have to troubleshoot. We are going to see areas that clearly our data say that we need to improve. It's important and incumbent upon us to not just stand there and admire the problem, but to go forward and develop a plan. Our kids deserve that sort of urgency from all of us. Next slide. As we keep mentioning, this plan is about not just a few of us in an office working. This actually requires engagement from multiple different stakeholders. It actually says that very clearly, that not only are we required to have this, we are required to submit evidence of how we've engaged our stakeholders. And so with that in mind, there will be people we will circle back with and contact to ensure that we are getting voices from all different perspectives, our staff as well as our community and our governance. This also because this is a landmark policy, a template that has never been done before. There's going to be probably some back and forth with MSDE as they themselves also make sure that the plan that they and the AIB created is actually reflecting the kind of information that they need as a state education agency. So we're anticipating that this is actually a living document and that we will be an open discourse with MSDE as we get to the point of a formal state level approval of this plan. Next slide. And so with that, we will turn it over to see if you have any questions or would like to engage in a discussion on what we just presented.
Are you going to present about community schools? That was on the agenda for today as well. No, okay.
No, but we do have 26 community schools that are working very closely with the community through a needs assessment to provide lots of wraparound services to our families. So we will be continuing to expand our community schools next year, and we're waiting to hear from the state about how many schools that they would recommend that we expand for under the blueprint. So there's always something exciting about the community schools.
Maybe we can put it in one of the agendas coming up, because we wanted to have a deep dive into community schools now, to fully understand what we're doing, and also to fully understand how this is supporting academic achievement for our students.
Absolutely. Be happy to do that.
So, board members, if you have any questions, please turn your lights on. Ms. Harris.
Yeah, thank you. There's so many pieces here. Just a couple quick questions, and looking at the early childhood, the pre-K piece, and this came up last night with one of the gentlemen who testified, the mixed delivery system.
Yes.
We know that it's going to require a huge expansion in personnel, trained early childhood educators to meet these target goals of really providing every child a high-quality pre-K experience. And so, as the gentleman last night was talking about the fact that one issue with some of our community-based providers is the licensure certification required at the state to provide the pre-K program that's envisioned here. And I'm just wondering, I'm sure we are one of the LEAs that is going to be most challenged here. Mm-hmm. Some of the much smaller counties' LEAs probably won't have the issue to the same extent. But are there conversations going on to look very pragmatically at what is this sort of, we do want high-quality educators, but we don't want bureaucratic requirements standing in the way about looking at how we are either more realistically or or better supporting the certification that is going to be required of these early child educators.
So that's a really great question. There's been a lot of discussion at the Montgomery County level with Health and Human Services and many of the early childhood community entities and advocacy groups that are helping to support the child care. And actually, the data would probably show that it's the opposite, that larger districts like Montgomery County have more community-based partnerships than some of the smaller districts that may be more rural. So right now, we have 9 community-based programs that partner with us under the blueprint, some others through that work on the pre-K expansion grants. But the goal is really to increase that number so that we have more of a balance between opportunities to have private pre-K as well as opportunities for pre-K in the school system. So during the process of the development of the comprehensive plan, there's been lots of discussion during the AIB work sessions, and then also the public comment that was given to the AIB, that the child care providers are faced with some significant challenges in terms of their budgets, the costs for the programs, and also ensuring that the lead teacher is pre-K 3 certified, and then in 2 years that the assistant teacher has a CDA, Child Development Associates, or an associate's degree. So there are resources at the county level in Montgomery County as well as at the state level that will help to provide opportunities for those providers to take additional coursework, to have their transcripts reviewed to determine what additional courses they may need to take. If they have a bachelor's degree and they want to get PK3 certified. And then also the state has a fund available for childcare and our paraprofessionals who are working with pre-K where they can apply for the CDA, the application costs. It's about $400. So we are starting to form a work group around looking at how we can help develop these cohorts of paraeducators and community-based assistants to reach their CDA, just as we have cohorts for National Board Certification for Teachers. That requirement's coming up in about 2 years, so we've already started some of that groundwork, working very closely with the county government. Montgomery County also has a new coordinating entity that is looking at a number of these infrastructure issues and capacity building issues, and really looking at all the possible funding sources, including the county's Children's Opportunity Fund, to be able to kind of help to build the capacity and the infrastructure of these providers. But it is an issue across the state. Many were concerned that some baseline data was not gathered first before the requirements were written. And some of the child care advocates are also saying that more time is needed in order for the providers to be able to meet these requirements, that through the Excel system, the quality rating scales, and other accreditation, they're able to determine that these programs are pretty high quality, and so allowing more time for the teacher to become PK3 certified is something that they've been advocating very strongly for. So I don't think that there will be any legislative changes within the next year, but we're hoping after some baseline data is collected across the state that they will come back and maybe take a look at some of the timelines for meeting those quality enhancements. So we don't want to remove the quality. We want everyone to have the quality, but the feasibility of being able to work full-time and go to school and complete a practicum is a very difficult challenge for many of our community providers. So this is an area that has been well studied and discussed, and so we are working with our local capacity as well as the state to try to increase those numbers. And we're also actively trying to recruit more community-based partners here in Montgomery County. There is a Child Care Alliance, an organization that is funded through a state grant that is looking to work with family child care providers to help build their capacity as well. So if we could, I think they're working with 4 or 5 providers in 4 or 5 counties, including Montgomery County. So we're also advocating with the state that they continue to be funded to be able to do some of that work, because we also want to make sure that providers of all types have an opportunity to participate. So family child care centers, private schools, religious schools, as long as they're meeting those state requirements. And it's extremely difficult for many of the family providers to be able to meet those requirements. And then there's some concern regarding the per pupil costs that are provided under the blueprint for the family child care and other programs. Montgomery County is in the midst of, Health and Human Services is in the midst of a cost of care study, an actual study that's going to look at the cost of care here in Montgomery County, given the cost that to operate the programs, the cost of space, the cost of housing, cost of living. So they're working on that, and we're hoping to bring that data back to the state. The Montgomery County Council last year in the spring also had an intern who did a focus group with many of our child care providers, and there were some implications from that report that speak to exactly what you're talking about. And we also did submit that report to MSDE and the AIB. So it's a very timely question, and it's one we're continuing to partner together with the county government to work on. It's a very important issue in this county.
Yeah, I mean, to me, there's so much chicken and egg here, because a lot of the pillars here require a more robust pool of talented staff than currently exists. We talk about it all the time. Yes, we need more, but they're not there. But part of the work, we will be creating those people to fill those roles. And so I just, reflecting back to our meeting earlier this week, our joint boards meeting, I'll say it again, we have early childhood programs in many high schools. MC has an early childhood associate's degree. You're talking about a 2-year lead time. We could be creating right now a bunch of certified providers, just in the resource that we have in our schools. Our students are students in our classrooms right now.
Right. There is a pathway for the students to move into those programs and to become early childhood certified, and we're trying to recruit more of them to become teachers.
Make the students know about it, because that's a barrier too, and they don't know about it. And then the one other piece here, so I do think one of the things that I've learned at the MABE conference was more in depth was the requirement that really we support financially the students in this college career readiness piece. So tuition for dual enrollment, fees for AP, IB, but also any materials
Books, materials, transportation.
required for students in our CTE programs. So our Academy of Health Professions students, their scrubs, their, whatever, the things that they need to go into the clinical space. Our construction trades foundation, their hard hats, their boots, those things. And just, that, and you're saying, where's that money going to come from? And I would just say, I see a lot of partners in the community that will benefit from the creation of these professionals who have in the past been, and I think when we go forward evangelizing, proselytizing on this issue, make these in-kind donations. Our health system folks donating the scrubs, donating the stethoscopes, donating those things. Our construction trades folks donating the hard hats, the boots, the tool belts, the things, the automotive trades, these folks being our in-kind partners to provide some of these things that we are now, there can't be any cost associated to a student for participating in these programs, and get our in-kind partner, our partners to provide that in-kind support. So, that's a huge benefit to us.
It is.
And anyway, just thinking, but I know those partners are out there because I have seen them and talked to them. So.
We do. We have so many wonderful partners in Montgomery County. I had an opportunity a few weeks ago to talk with the Montgomery County Collaboration Board, and it was some of the universities, but also the community and business partners who are very eager to support our students in the blueprint, not just in terms of the internships, but they also have very creative ideas about new pathways, new projects, new internships. So I think we're really poised and ready to look at some expansion and move forward. And I know that there was at least one opportunity where one of the car dealerships was able to donate some of the first cars that are made on their line. They usually don't sell those first cars. They kind of get all the glitches out, but they donated some of those first cars for us to be able to work on. So I think our staff is really expanding the great partnerships that they have with the Workforce Board and others, and our students are really greatly benefiting.
Yeah, I think our visionary community understands we're creating their workforce, and they want to be part of that.
Right, and the fact that we're meeting the industry standards, I think, is one of the things that's absolutely critical. So as a child graduates, if they want to become an electrician, I know there's a new project that's apprenticeship that's working on that, or they're going to be building homes, they'll leave with the industry certification so they can immediately go out and enter the workforce and be able to make a living wage to support themselves.
Yeah.
And I think one thing I just wanted to add to that answer is, through the creation of the new senior advisor, community advisor position, as well as the fact that we have a team of partnerships, we also have some existing MCPS employees that we need to make sure that we're strategically connecting some of these needs with the need of the blueprint. So I hope my colleagues are listening.
I had questions about metrics. Do you expect that there will be targets, or how will they evaluate if you are on track, right? So, teachers, historical hiring data, and trends.
Well, I think that this is the reason why they are collecting this data for the last few years. They're really trying to establish a baseline, and then they can take a look at that data over a period of time in individual districts as well as statewide. So I don't think they've exactly set all the targets. The blueprint talks about some expansion. It talks about things like elimination of the achievement gap, and it doesn't always have the specifics, but I think they're going to evaluate that. The AIB will, after they collect all the data and sort of see where we are, and then they will set reasonable targets for where we need to be. But they also the reporting relies on individual LEAs to also make some projections for themselves in terms of the target. So I think for some of the ones like the Grow Your Own or the others, we do have some internal targets already. So in a number of areas, we're already sort of exceeding, or we're sort of ahead of what we're being asked to do in terms of the blueprint. So it's a way to also demonstrate, to celebrate our accomplishments, but also demonstrate our leadership in the state in terms of implementing the blueprint. But I think once that data is gathered, then they will set some statewide targets.
And my final question is, how will the public, our community, have access to the March 15th report once you submit it, or?
The March 15th report for all LEAs will be made public. It will be posted online for the Accountability and Implementation Board. And what will happen is, for each LEA, we will submit an initial plan to the Maryland State Department of Education. They'll review the plan and they will give us feedback. They'll send it back to us. Edits, additions, maybe extra information that they want to know, we'll send it back to them. And this process could go back and forth a little bit until they're satisfied that they have all the information that they need. Then they'll pass that on to the Accountability and Implementation Board. So once our final report is approved, it will be posted on the website, and the Accountability and Implementation Board has promised us that they will work to publish all of our reports in multiple languages and make them available on their websites. So that's the preliminary information that we have now. But we're also working with our own local folks who will have an opportunity to review and give us some feedback as well. So we're trying to make all of these documents and things, as soon as we get things from the state, to add them to our MCPS Blueprint website and to make them accessible.
Thank you. Ms. Rivera-Evans?
Yeah, just for clarification purposes for the folks at home. So, and correct me if I misunderstood, each LEA has a stakeholders group?
Yeah, there are multiple stakeholder groups. There are work groups for each pillar, and then there's separate stakeholders that the school system engages with. And then there will be opportunities to communicate through the public at large through surveys and other types of information.
Because my hope would be that those stakeholders groups looks like the
Absolutely.
student population.
Absolutely. Very diverse groups.
We are serving, especially with the early childhood. It concerns me a little bit about some of the additional things that we're going to be adding for certifications and so on, with especially a lot of the immigrant community that we know do a lot of this work, and to make sure that they have access to some of the opportunities for continuing education and forever grants, whatever that comes through. So that kind of communication, I think, is going to be, I would hate to see something that's supposed to help with equity be actually an issue with equity.
Right, so I'm really glad you asked this question, because early childhood education has been a really top priority in the county for many years. As you know, there are many community partners, government, nonprofits, who are working to support the expansion of pre-K for our students. So Health and Human Services has worked with us to execute a series of work groups that are looking at things like workforce development, capacity building, education, cost of care, things like that. So there are probably about 5 different separate sub-work groups that have been working over a number of months. There have been a few virtual forums I've presented at. Those have been translated. And HHS has done several different things too, has made several efforts at reaching out to all of the community, because the child care providers are made up of a large group and many immigrant families. So really to reach out to those that that may not always be in the flow of information.
And my hope would be also that we keep in mind the different health initiatives that we have in the county. You know, we have the Latino, the African American,
health initiatives,
Caribbean, and so
yes.
on. And they have done so much work during COVID to communicate with the community in very creative ways. And as Dr. McKnight reminded us the other day, something that came out of COVID is the creativity and the things that we wanted to do before that we kind of stopped in our tracks because it wasn't the traditional way of doing things. So my hope would be that we involve those groups as well to be able to take any information. Like when the blueprint comes out, we should share that with all these stakeholders.
And I believe our behavioral health folks have been communicating that information to the various ethnic groups. I know that we invited probably 22 different partners to a virtual meeting to talk about this actual reporting in the template, the partnerships, the well-being, the joint developments looking at youth development and other types of counseling programs. So I believe there already is a lot of active communication going on in that area, but I will revisit it.
Thank you. And my last suggestion on that would be that it might be a good idea to bring them all to the table and do a presentation on on the blueprint, and it's not often that these groups get to work together, but there's such a there's such a similarities among us that a lot of issues that we share, including the difficulties of childcare and the cost and so on. So I think it would be great if we could maybe do a presentation for these groups.
That would be great. And we had our community-based health partners join us on a presentation on December 20th, I believe. We probably had about 10 or so community partners. Thank you.
And I'll just add on to that note, Board Member Rivera-Oven, you are highlighting the importance of our continued work around engagement. What we will do is we continue to bring the blueprint forward, and I think Dr. Wong-Kalisko referred to this earlier when she talked about also our senior community advisor, Ms. Garcia, being very much a part of this to create the vision for how are we going to reach every single constituency group within our community to understand the implications of the blueprint on our children across the entire county. I think it was our last meeting we talked about even taking some of our information out to the community at different times and at different ways. So we will make sure when we come back and share, we can, I think with all of our presentations, actually moving forward, we can continue to share those specific outreach networks, because we want to share with you what we're doing, and then we also want to hear, is this reaching everybody that we needed to reach? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. That concludes that part of our agenda, and we look forward for your encore presentation on community schools at a future date.
Absolutely.
We are now moving on to agenda item 8.0, consent items, and I will ask if board members have any consent items that they wish to pull.
Yes.
Ms. Harris.
Yes, 8.1 and 8.6, please.
Mrs. Modrowski.
8.4.
Okay. Can I get a motion to move 8.2, 8.3, 8.5, 8.7, 8.8, 8.9, 8.10, oh my goodness, all the way to 19?
In bulk?
In block.
Yes, I move that we move those in bulk.
I second.
All in favor? Ms. Wolf?
Hold on, yes.
Unanimous with those present. Let's talk about 8.1, procurement contracts of $25,000 or more.
Yeah, just a couple of items. Two items in here relate to vehicle purchases, 1114498 and B 1560. And I do know, as I got the question answered earlier, that none of these are electric. The snow trucks, because they aren't available in an electric version. The others because of the supply chain and the not being available. And then, but we also made an emergency bus purchase earlier in the year, and those were also all diesel. And so, and this is getting kind of down to the sustainability question. And maybe this is something we'll bring up at fiscal management, but looking at how we are intentionally planning around our needs to see how we can get around the supply chain challenges of fully electrifying our vehicle as we have pledged to do. So again, that might be something to bring up through fiscal management, just to get a little more in detail about how we are doing that pre-planning, so that we don't get in a place where we have to make an emergency purchase and we can't get the electric vehicles that we want. Is that?
Yeah, that's a great point. I appreciate that. The Fiscal Management Committee, I think, would be a great place to discuss that. That, of course, is something that we look at as we, transition to electrified fleet. And your point around the supply chain issues is a good one. That is the challenge that we're facing with some of these more specialized vehicles, including the special education buses. But I think that would be wonderful.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And then the last item on that, on item 8.1, item 9145, .1, which is a big $2+ million contract around produce. But I did just want to highlight it with a thank you, because in reading it, I noticed that DFNS is moving that contract away from bid to an RFP process so that we can intentionally make it more possible for our local growers to be supplying the produce that we serve in schools, in combination with their attempt to also sort of advertise and give a shout out to those local growers when we are incorporating their products in our school food. And I really do appreciate it, and I had the chance to meet with our former student member of the board, Hannah Olini, last weekend. This was a big issue, a priority to her, it made me think of her. So I did just want to express my gratitude that DFNS is really sort of embracing as part of, I think this is part of our sustainability policy. And so that was that, thank you. And then the other item, 8.6, which was the big contract for disposable cafeteria trays. And I did want to just highlight for our student sustainability advocates, especially our compostology team and others who are working to increase the uptake of food recycling in our lunchrooms, that these trays I have confirmed are compostable. So another point in our attempt to meet the promise we've made in our aggressive sustainability policy. So again, thank you.
Thank you for pointing that out. Mrs. Nadrowski.
Yeah, thank you. I would like someone to speak to the contract for 8.4 in terms of, so I didn't have this in my material, so I didn't come across it with that much lead time, but I have questions about, so we get a lot of contracts here and there that are titled student assessment and data analytics platforms. I'm curious as to specifically what this is. Does this, I noticed no students were involved. I don't know if this is strictly about central office data input, if this is something, I don't understand really exactly what this is, who was doing it before. I'm assuming somebody's been keeping track of our data. If it was the same company, I'm assuming we put the RFP out because the extensions were expired and we'd reached our limits, and so we had to do it. So I'm curious as to how much our previous contract was worth and what they'll be doing and stuff like that.
Sure. So you are correct. Someone was already doing this. This is our internal assessment and data management platform. It allows for us to ensure that all school-based staff, all school-based leaders, and central office leaders have access to student-level data and multiple measures, multiple data points. So it allows them to kind of do the data monitoring that they need. So it looks at demographic information, and you can bring in the MAP data, you can bring in state assessment data, attendance data. So it allows you to do the ongoing data monitoring to inform instruction of students. And so the Power School company has had the contract. You were correct in terms of the contract expired, including the extensions. So we did the RFP, and this was our second go-around with the RFP. We did it last year, but we revisited it this year. And so because it's an internal data system, there wasn't parents don't have access to it. Students take their assessments in it, but there are no modifications that can be made because of the vendor in terms of they serve multiple districts in Maryland. And so that's why the process did not include, for example, parent stakeholder groups as part of the RFP process.
For students?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know how much the previous contract was for?
So the previous contract was a 3-year term. I'll turn it over to Ms. McCray, who can share that.
Yes, the previous contract was a 3-year term with the opportunity to extend, I want to say 2 one-year terms. And then the total sum, I would, for all of those years where we had used those contracts, I'd have to verify that number.
Okay. So this one would be for 2 years more than our original contract is, but also then with 2 one-year extensions.
That is
yes.
correct.
And I'm sorry, one of the things that we noticed and we kind of took, we modeled after our technology partners in terms of a technological system that includes data that requires a lot of overhaul and time. We decided to model and say, let's do a 5-year RFP instead with the 2-year option as opposed to 3-year, because it is a lot of data migration that would have to occur. And so to allow for that flexibility, we wanted to increase the RFP this time around.
So in this fiscal year, can you tell me how many different contracts we have approved that, that address student assessment and data analytics?
So I cannot, but I'm going to, that's something we'll have
asked
to
in the
get back
past
to you on,
about
only because
a list
this platform is only within the Office of Shared Accountability. So the larger scope in terms of student assessment, we would have to look at, but this does something unique from our student information system, for example. So, but I think that's something we would have to come back to you and answer that question at a later date.
Okay.
Is that what you meant, Ms. Ladrapi, from their office or?
I mean, as a school system, I'd like to know how many of these, because like I said, we don't get them all at one time. We get them periodically, and I haven't started my own Excel spreadsheet to keep track of these things, which I guess I should, but I'm just curious as to, you know, it's a big contract, and so, you know, I'm just curious as to, I was curious as to what we had been spending on it, what it's used for specifically, if it's something, you know, that we're finding people are pleased with, not pleased with, and, you know, the overall big picture of it is what I'm trying to get a sense of, so.
Yes, and might I add, I mean, we can definitely produce that information for you. With all of these contracts that we have to support student information systems, I mean, they're on different timelines, and so, you know, when one expires, you know, it may not be on the same time with the other. So we're happy to pull that information for you, but I do want to go back to one thing the team presented. When you have a 3-year contract for something as important as student information systems that so many people rely on, I'm thinking our teachers, our administrators, central office, how we communicate it to our parents. It's difficult to implement something for 3 years and change that 3 years because all the training that accompanies getting prepared for that. You know, we actually are able to see how well it's being able to be implemented with fidelity, and we want to get stakeholder feedback. And I know for this contract specifically, you know, when it was time to renew, we knew we wanted to be able to get some more feedback from the field, from the people who are utilizing this. So I think that's something that we should continue to consider moving forward with these contracts. Some, especially one like this in which so many people rely on use of it, we want to give them a chance to be trained, utilized, and the feedback that they provide, give them enough time for that feedback to be one that is really reflective of how it's playing out in their work.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that because that was one of my other kind of questions was in reading through the implementation plan and stuff like that, and I think they did talk about staff supports and things like that, or training, professional learning, I guess is what. And so that's why I wanted to confirm that it was still the same company as previously. And so does that imply that there will be continued professional learning incorporated into this contract?
Yes, so as was shared earlier, we have new staff, new leaders. So there is, you know, the refresher training for those who may already have some skills, but also for those who will be new to the system. So we will have that professional learning plan that kind of addresses all of the needs of the different levels of experience with using the Performance Matters data management system.
Okay, so this is technically like the Performance Matters?
Yes, yes.
Got it. Okay. Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I get a motion to move 8.1, 8.4, and 8.6 in block? Did you have another one?
No, I don't. I'm trying to process this, so I was thinking maybe I should keep it separate for voting purposes, only because I haven't, you know, I'm a person who needs to think about things a little bit. So can I move 8.1 and 8.6?
I second.
All in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
That is unanimous.
And I will move 8.4.
I second.
All in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay, I'll vote for it, but.
That is unanimous. All right, so moving on to agenda item number 9 is for informational purposes only. Agenda item number 10, can I get a motion to move 10.1 through 10.3 in block?
So moved.
I second.
All in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
That is unanimous. 10.4 is new business. Do board members have any new business to bring forward? Very well. So I do have a statement for the board in compliance with Section 3-211 of the Open Meetings Act to share with you. We'll move on to the announcement of December 7th, 2022 opinion of the Open Meetings Compliance Board. The Board of Education recently received an opinion from the Open Meetings Compliance Board dated December 7th, 2022. The Compliance Board found that a violation of the Open Meetings Act occurred in connection with the board's September 22nd, 2022 closing statement. The Compliance Board found that the Board of Education failed to make sufficiently detailed disclosures before meeting in closed session on September 22nd, 2022. Specifically, with respect to its use of the personnel exception, the Compliance Board found that the board could have provided more detail about the personnel matters under discussion. With respect to the board's use of the collective bargaining exception, while the Compliance Board commended the board for identifying a topic and a reason for excluding the public from disclosure, the Compliance Board found that the board should have disclosed at minimum the labor union that was being discussed. Finally, with respect to the legal advice and litigation exceptions, the Compliance Board found that the information in the board's closing statement was too vague. The board has put some safeguards in place to ensure that the closing statement is more specific going forward. A copy of the Compliance Board's opinion is currently being circulated for board members to sign in accordance with Section 3-211A2. Do we need to vote on that, or no? All right, so that concludes, we have informational summaries in agenda item 11, and agenda item 12 is adjournment. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
I second.
All in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
And that is unanimous. We are adjourned.